Chapter 136. Before the punch arrived, the overbearing force had already broken through the air. Under the pressure of the huge force, several buildings were directly blasted away, leaving a huge fist print on the ground. The next moment, Lianping's fist had already hit the ground. The terrifying force erupted under everyone's feet, like a disaster of a magnitude 10 earthquake, drowning everything in shock and impact. The shock wave formed by the airflow rushed in all directions, and the earthquake destroyed one house after another. In the face of this violent force, the house became as fragile as a piece of paper. The broken glass, mud, and walls expanded and cracked, and then completely shattered, together with the bursting flames and flashing lightning, formed a doomsday-like scene. At the center of the explosion, smoke and dust rose into the sky, covering a large area of ruins. The whole disaster lasted for about 10 seconds, and when everything returned from the violent to calm, there were screams and cries of pain everywhere. Zhang Yanheng groggily climbed up from the ruins. Fortunately, he ran far away in advance, so he was not buried by the collapsed reinforced concrete. His eyes glazed over as he looked at his surroundings. The originally magnificent manor had already turned into a large area of ruins. There were rubble, beams, dancing flames, and lightning everywhere. Further away, there were several broken walls, standing alone in the ruins. At this moment, a groan sounded in his ear. Zhang Yanheng turned his head and saw Zhang Hai lying on the ground covered in blood. Little Hai! Little Hai! He stumbled over and suddenly tripped. He looked down and saw the body of the old housekeeper lying at his feet. The man's chest was full of blood, and his lower body was crushed by a large piece of cement. Until his death, his eyes were still full of disbelief. Zhang Yanheng looked at the body of the old housekeeper, swallowed, and then rushed to Zhang Hai. He squatted down and slowly pressed his fingers on Zhang Hai's neck. Fortunately, he's still alive. Zhang Yanheng sighed, and then looked at Zhang Hai's body. He saw that Zhang Hai's body was covered with dust from the explosion, and his arms, chest, and stomach were all cut by glass fragments. As for Zhang Hai himself, he was completely unconscious at this time. "Help! Someone come quickly!" Seeing that Zhang Hai was not in danger for the time being, Zhang Yanheng shouted, "Someone come and save us!" After shouting for a while, he suddenly heard a strange sound behind him, as if someone had suddenly stomped on the ground. Then, he stopped moving. Zhang Yanheng seemed to have felt something. The hairs on his back stood up one by one. He slowly turned his head and saw Lianping standing in the middle of the ruins, looking at them with his arms crossed. "I beg you." No matter how arrogant and stubborn Zhang Yanheng was, he already knew how terrible the situation was. Facing this monster-like man in front of them, they had actually been eaten to death from the very beginning. It was too late for regret and guilt. Zhang Yanheng only intended to do his best to save the Zhang family's bloodline. Lianping looked down at the old man in front of him and watched as the old man kept begging him. I beg you to spare our lives." Zhang Yanheng's body trembled as he stammered out the words. The power and wealth that he usually relied on were useless in the face of Lianping's absolute power. When Zhang Hai really grabbed the throat of the Zhang family with his hand, he found that the only thing he could do was to beg for mercy. "I can give you everything. All the resources, wealth, and power of the Zhang family can be used to help you. What do you think? As long as you spare our lives. Let us live, and the Zhang family will always obey you from now on. We will be your strongest backing. With the resources of the Zhang family and your power, you can do whatever you want in the whole Xia." In the face of Zhang Yanheng's begging, Lianping was silent for a while. Then he suddenly pointed to Zhang Hai and said, "I came here because of him. If I let you go, the Zhang family will work for me in the future. This is not a problem. But he, Zhang Hai, must die." Zhang Yanheng's face changed and his neck stiffened. He turned his head bit by bit to look at Zhang Hai at his feet. He slowly squatted down and said word by word, I promise you that he will never appear in front of you again. He will be sent abroad to be put under house arrest and will never touch any electronic products for the rest of his life. I also promise." In the face of Zhang Yanheng's numerous promises and proposals, Li Anping just shook his head coldly and said, "He must pay the price for what he did." Zhang Yanheng's arms trembled and he slowly said, "But he is my grandson." Li Anping remained unmoved and said lightly, "He dies or you die. I only need one person to help me manage the Zhang family." Seeing Zhang Yanheng's trembling shoulders, Li Anping continued, "Do you want to do it yourself or do you want me to help you? Even if Xiao Hai dies, I still have Xiao Kuang and the other members of the Zhang family. But I am the only head of the family." "Xiao Hai. Grandpa is sorry." Thinking of this, Zhang Yanheng slowly lowered his head. Just then, Zhang Hai slowly opened his eyes and saw Zhang Yanheng in front of him. He called out in a daze, "Grandpa! What's wrong with me?" He propped himself up with his hands and let out a muffled groan as if he had pulled his wounds. Then he saw Li Anping in the distance. Zhang Hai's expression was as if he had seen a ghost. He sat on the ground and desperately stepped back. He screamed, "Grandpa! Li Anping! It seems that I will do it." After saying this, Li Anping walked towards Zhang Hai step by step. Zhang Hai stared blankly at Li Anping, who was walking towards him, and Zhang Yanheng, who stood silently on the side with his head down. After years of political struggle, he seemed to have understood something. He smiled bitterly and said to Li Anping with a glimmer of hope, "I don't know what you have said or what agreement you have reached, but is it too late for me to apologize for what I have done before?" Li Anping shook his head. Zhang Hai said regretfully, "Spare me this time, and I will repay you 10-fold or even 100-fold." His strong pretense was suddenly pierced by the horror of life and death. Zhang Hai hurriedly got up and knelt on the ground while enduring the pain. He shouted, "Please! Money, resources, women, I can give you anything. I really don't want to die." Seeing that Li Anping still didn't show any mercy, Zhang Hai finally cried and roared. With a bang, before he could finish his words, Li Anping's fist smashed his head into smithereens. Li Anping wiped the liquid on his hand and turned to look at Zhang Yanheng, who had been silent all the time, and said, "This is the end of it. Think about how to explain it to the public. Block all the news that should be blocked. Also, come to my office at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I have something to ask you to do." After saying that, Li Anping exerted force on his feet and rushed into the sky. After a loud explosion, he had already rolled up a wave of air and flew into the distance. Only the ruins of the Zhang family were left. Zhang Yanheng seemed to have lost his soul. He stumbled to Zhang Hai's headless body, knelt down, and stroked his grandson's gradually cold body. Suddenly, a series of footsteps came, and a group of security guards ran in the direction of Zhang Yanheng. "Master, are you all right?" "Master! Master, what's wrong with you? Send Master to the hospital." Within an hour, the news of the Zhang family spread to the other 8 royal families through various channels. Some people smiled contemptuously, some were full of fear, and some pretended to be calm. Undoubtedly, they all withdrew their forces and didn't want to hit Li Anping's muzzle. Because almost all of them thought that Li Anping's destruction was a foregone conclusion with the arrival of the League of Stars. Even if he was a level 5 ability user, it was impossible for him to offend the League of Stars and so many forces in Xia and still be safe and sound. In the eyes of the 9 royal families, Li Anping had obviously become a mad dog. The Zhang family was the best example of the result of fighting with Li Anping. Chapter 137. This time, Li Anping's attack on the Zhang family's manor was controlled by many people and the impact was calmed down. However, all the higher-ups already knew that Li Anping was on everyone's blacklist. In their eyes, Li Anping had completely become a mad dog. No one wanted to get hurt in order to kill this mad dog that was about to die. With no one stopping him and the green light everywhere, Lianping's every plan was carried out very smoothly. First, the Dragon Sparrow Guards carried out a nationwide investigation. The targets were all kinds of hidden ability users. Then, different methods would be used to deal with different ability users. Those who used their ability to commit crimes would be arrested and sent to Tianjing. Those who stood aloof from worldly affairs would be invited to join Xia Dragonfinch or be subject to a certain degree of monitoring. Unfortunately, most people who had abilities would more or less use their abilities to break the law. They were all arrested and brought to Lianping. However, Lianping still hadn't given any orders to the ability user organizations among the people. On the other hand, most of the equipment in the Biology Research Institute had been completed. As the equipment and personnel were improved, the entire ability user cloning project was carried out in an orderly manner. However, until now, not only was there no news from the Fire Dragon Vanguard, but there was also no news from the League of Stars. Everything was like the calm before the storm. All the higher-ups in Tianjing were waiting to see how long Lianping could jump around. Inside the Biology Research Institute, Basement 12. In a huge room, there were hundreds of golden-haired men standing there. They looked exactly the same, and their bodies were exactly the same. They looked like countless twins. Lianping walked up to one of the golden-haired men and lightly tapped his forehead with his finger. With a strange sound, the man collapsed. His eyes lost focus, and then he stopped breathing. Behind Lianping, there were dozens of blonde men's corpses lying on the ground. In the face of this silent slaughter, the hundreds of blonde men didn't react at all. They were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered as they quietly watched Lianping kill them one by one. Once again, a blonde man was torn in half. Lianping's eyes flashed with a hint of impatience. He slammed his right hand into the crowd. Under the empty palm, a shock wave formed in the air directly exploded in the crowd. Then, Lianping slammed a few more times and the hundreds of clones in front of him all died. Then, Lianping looked at his physical fitness. Strength was 16. 5. Speed was 15. 7. And physical fitness was 17. 6. Including the thousands of clones that he had killed during this period of time, as well as the criminals with superpowers that were sent to be executed from all over the country, Lianping's stamina had only increased by 0.1. Such a snail's pace of improvement was too slow for Lianping. Without even looking at the broken arm on the ground, Lianping opened the door and walked out. In the hallway outside, Sherwin walked towards him. Lianping asked directly, "They're all ordinary people. There's not a single ability user. How's the progress of the other models?" "No, it's too difficult for domain and parasitic ability users to clone their abilities. We need to simulate the environment where their abilities are produced," Sherwin replied. "I feel that we should still focus on the bloodline and mutation type. The abilities of these two types have more to do with genetics and DNA. The possibility of obtaining abilities after cloning is higher." "Okay." Lianping nodded. "How's the Kirin Type 1? The so-called Kirin Type 1 was the one Xia Dragonfinch took away Feng Qi's body. Lianping directly asked for it and gave it to Sherwin to clone this bloodline ability user." "Very good," Sherwin said excitedly. "The body of the source material is very intact. According to his body's information, I'm confident that I can clone him very well and have a chance to give birth to an ability. However, the biggest problem right now is Qi. Qi is something that can't be observed by ordinary people and instruments except for you ability users. I'm afraid that after the Kirin Type 1 is cloned, it will become a level 0 ability user at most because it doesn't have Qi. Moreover, you need it so urgently and give too little time. I'm afraid that their lifespan will be very short. They won't even be able to upgrade their ability level. We don't have enough materials right now. I need more mutant and bloodline ability users. There will be more material. Lifespan and potential don't matter. As long as it's an ability user, Even if it's level 0, the key is quantity, Lianping said indifferently. The Lady Type 1 is still in production. As for the Kirin Type 1, when can it be put into mass production? Sherwin frowned and roughly estimated. The fastest is 5 days. When the time comes, will it also be like the Lady Type 1 being manufactured every day? Correct. Lianping confirmed. While investing in research, you have to maintain maximum production. I have to use it every day. Understood. Sherwin nodded, indicating that he understood. As for how Lianping used these clones, he didn't care at all. Because in the past 2 weeks, all the staff members who cared about this had all mysteriously disappeared. Sherwin then added, and the researchers I asked for, when will they arrive? How long do I have to wait? Lianping glanced at him and said, don't worry. Who knows, they might already be on their way. Xia West Coast, Port City, Ningyi City. Peter pushed his bicycle on the way home alone, still upset about what happened at school. Today was Friday. Originally, he wanted to invite the most beautiful girl in the class, Lu Tiantian, to have dinner together tomorrow. As a result, the introverted him didn't put this matter into action until after school. Damn, Peter, you're really a coward. Peter clenched his fist and muttered to himself. Then he thought of Lu Tiantian's beautiful face and seemed to be somewhat distracted. Hey, Peter, why did you go home alone today? You didn't wait for me. A black guy ran over. As the only mixed blood like Peter in the class, the relationship between the two has always been good. Peter, did you hear? Zhang Dong from the next class is going to transfer schools. I heard that the English teacher Tan is going to get married. Sigh, what a pity. This black guy was obviously a well-informed person in the school. At this moment, he was telling his best friend the new gossip he had heard. However, Peter was still immersed in his fantasies about Zhang Tianzi, replying to him one sentence at a time. He simply didn't listen to much of what he was saying. Hey, I heard that Lu Tiantian had a car to send her to and from school every day for the past few weeks. A girl said that she is dating a rich man. How is that possible? Hearing this news, Peter turned pale with fright. He jumped up, grabbed his best friend Mike's collar and said, Don't talk nonsense, Tiantian isn't that kind of person. Hey buddy, don't be so agitated. Mike pushed Peter's hands away with great difficulty and slowly said, You can't judge a person by their appearance. A beauty like Lu Tiantian has been pursued by countless men since childhood. Some of these men are very talented, some are very handsome, and some have successful careers and are very rich. You say, a little girl facing the pursuit of so many good men, how could she resist the temptation? Don't think that people look simple, but their hearts are also simple. Appearance and heart are two completely different things. Mike knew that Peter was interested in Lu Tiantian, so he patiently explained to his friend. But the other party looked like he had lost his soul and obviously didn't listen to his words. After the two parted ways, Peter walked home with his imagination running wild. His mind was still full of Lu Tiantian. It wasn't until he heard a cry of surprise that he suddenly reacted. What's going on? Peter raised his head and looked around. His sharp ears listened hard, but he didn't hear anything else. He frowned and looked at his house, but found that the door was open for some reason. Uncle? Are you there? Peter carefully walked into the house. When he passed by the porch, he casually pulled out an umbrella as a weapon. Did a thief come in? He carefully looked around the room and found that the living room was full of traces of fighting. The cabinets, tables, and chairs were all smashed to the ground. At this moment, a warning sign sounded in his heart. Without time to think, Peter rushed forward. His whole body was like a juggling act. He flipped over twice in a row and rolled on the ground before standing up. Looking back, the place where he had been just now seemed to have been cut by an invisible sharp blade. The floor and furniture had been turned into pieces. Even the umbrella in his hand had been cut into several pieces, leaving only a bare handle. A man with a scorpion tattoo on his face was looking at him with a sinister smile. Peter shouted, "Who are you? Why did you come to my house?" Scorpion ignored Peter and just turned his head and shouted, "Hurry up, don't wait for me, I'll stay and play with him." Hearing this, Peter looked behind him and saw several men in blue and white uniforms tying up his uncle and aunt and sending them to a black van. "Uncle!" he shouted and jumped over Scorpion, rushing toward the van. "You dare to turn your back to me, are you courting death?" Before his voice died away, Peter felt that there were two invisible sharp blades in the air slashing toward him at the same time. However, he relied on his superhuman intuition to twist left and right, dodging Scorpion's attacks one by one. "What on earth is this thing?" Peter looked at Scorpion in the distance with a face full of horror, completely unable to understand how the other party had attacked him. If he hadn't suddenly gained superpowers some time ago, he would have been killed in an instant. However, the other party's attacks were invisible. Although Peter relied on his superhuman intuition and agile body to dodge time and time again, there was no way he could save his uncle. He could only watch as his uncle and aunt were sent to the van and disappeared into the traffic. Scorpion laughed sinisterly. "Are you also an ability user? Superhuman body coordination? Superhuman intuition? Or sensitivity that far surpasses that of ordinary people? Why are you in such a hurry? Your uncle was only invited to participate in a research. He won't die. Maybe he'll even be very happy." "Forget it, why am I telling you all this? Let's see if you can survive first." As Scorpion finished speaking, the warning signs in Peter's heart suddenly increased by 10 times. If he could use his psychic chi, he would be able to see that 9 transparent sharp blades that were like scorpion tails rose from behind Scorpion's back, shooting toward him at a speed as fast as bullet. At the critical moment, Peter pointed a finger at Scorpion. A stream of white silk threads shot out from his wrist, covering Scorpion's face. Meanwhile, the attacks from the 9 scorpion tails were all dodged by Peter with his superhuman agility. Scorpion, whose line of sight was blocked, felt a lump of sticky silk threads shooting toward him from the distance, tying up his body. "Let's stop playing around here." Scorpion was furious. He hadn't expected that his moment of carelessness would actually give the young man an opportunity to take advantage of, directly bringing out the psychic chi of a level 4 ability user. The white silk threads on the surface of his body were directly shattered by the endless psychic chi. However, when he raised his head to look, there was no trace of the young man. Then, his expression changed. He touched his chest and cursed angrily, "Damn it!" On the roof of a building in the distance, Peter's 4 limbs grabbed onto the wall, slowly climbing up like a spider. Then, he fished out a document from his bosom. On it was precisely Scorpion's photo. Peter looked at the information on the document and said through gritted teeth, "Special Task Force." Chapter 138. Inside the Xiaolong K base, Lianping walked along the corridor outside the prison, Yang Guang following closely behind him. "Has the recent operation been smooth? How many people came today?" Lianping asked Yang Guang behind him. Yang Guang replied cautiously, "It's been smooth. Other than the 5 people we lost in Gushan City last time, everyone else has successfully completed the mission, bringing back a total of 126 Esper criminals. Among them, there is 1 level 4 Esper, 12 level 3 Espers, and the rest are all below level 3. This is their criminal record." After saying this, Yang Guang handed a thick file to Lianping. "Okay." Lianping nodded, took the file and quickly flipped through it. Yang Guang watched Lianping flip through several pages in a few seconds, and was no longer as surprised as he was when he first saw it. But in his heart, he still admired Lianping's powerful memory and analytical ability. After this period of contact, Yang Guang also admired Lianping more and more. The other party was strong, cruel, and harsh, with astonishing execution and concentration, to the point that he almost didn't need to rest or eat. Sometimes, Yang Guang even subconsciously felt that if Li Anping ascended to the throne, perhaps he would be of greater help to Xia. When Li Anping walked in front of a large door, his footsteps stopped, and handed the file to Yang Guang. The guard captain in front of the door saluted and asked, "Officers, below is the Esper prison, please show your identification." The prison cells that Li Anping had just passed were the same as the ones that Li Qian and Xia Yunyun were in last time, where the prisoners were captured by Xia Dragonfinch, normal people with no abilities or threats, or people who were under house arrest. And the prison that Li Anping was about to go to was naturally the prison that held Esper criminals. After the two of them handed their identification to the guard captain used a device to scan their identification, then handed it back with both hands, and saluted again to let them pass. With a clang, the electronic door weighing tens of tons slowly opened, revealing a brightly lit corridor. Li Anping took the lead and walked in. On both sides of the corridor were large pieces of floor-to-ceiling glass, behind which they could see the prison cells and the prisoners. The prisoners that were locked in the first few cells were the less violent ones. Li Anping and Yang Guang didn't say much. After walking for about 200 meters or so, they passed through another electronic door, and the appearance of the prison cells changed. They saw that the left and right sides of the corridor were all specially made metal prison cells. The openings were all made of alloy pillars, and the pillars were all electrified. If any prisoner grabbed onto the pillars of the prison cell without permission, they would be electrocuted to death. There was only one prisoner in each prison cell. Some of them looked ferocious, while others looked amiable and approachable. But without exception, each of them had strong or weak psyche-chi fluctuations on their bodies. After looking at these espers, Li Anping suddenly said to Yang Guang, who was behind him, "Aside from the 126 espers captured by the Dragon Sparrow Guards, there should be a lot of them already, right?" "Yes." Li Anping nodded and said, "Get all the bloodline and mutation-type espers in the prison cells to have their blood tested, and send the blood samples to the 8th Research Institute." The 8th Research Institute was Li Anping's newly built Biological Research Institute. In order to make it easier to manage, Li Anping put it under Xia Dragonfinch's name, while maintaining the purity of the personnel. It became Xia Dragonfinch's 8th Research Institute, which was why it was called the 8th Research Institute. "Understood," Yang Guang replied. However, he didn't have any questions. This was because he didn't know what the 8th Research Institute was really researching. Ever since Li Anping set up the 8th Research Institute, most of the research projects in the institute were secret. In order to maintain the secrecy of the 8th Research Institute, Li Anping had ordered the Dragon Sparrow Guards to purge many people. Yang Guang didn't want to be on the purge list, so he didn't ask about the 8th Research Institute. Suddenly, a burly man in a nearby cell knocked on the steel wall of the cell and shouted, "Yang Guang, I didn't expect your limbs to be chopped off after not seeing you for so long. Ha 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 ha, tell me who did it, I'm going to treat him to a drink when I get out." Many people started to shout again. Because all the espers locked up in this prison were dangerous espers, they had forbidden all contact with the outside world. There was no news, no visits. According to the country's census, they were all dead people. "Where's Xia Laikong? Where's Xia Laikong? Tell him to get his ass in here. Tell Song Bang to come in here. I'll tell him everything he wants to know. Let me out now. Yang Guang, why did you bring a pretty boy in here? Are you giving him to us? Ha 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 ha, what a tender young man, this is my favorite." Yang Guang frowned and whispered into Li Anping's ear, "They've been locked up here for a long time, plus they have violent tendencies. Many of them have serious psychological problems, so no one was willing to let them out in the past." Li Anping nodded. When the prisoners on both sides of the corridor saw Li Anping and Yang Guang remain silent, they shouted even more wildly. Some of them even raised their middle fingers at Lianping. "Kid, come and lick your grandpa's ass. I'm going to F***ck his ass." Lianping looked coldly at the burly man who was the first to shout and threw a punch through the air. There was a loud rumble. The air in the corridor rolled back, and a sound like a tsunami was heard. A wave of air followed Lianping's fist and rolled wildly toward the burly man. The burly man immediately jumped up. Although his rationality told him that the alloy steel pillar outside could not be broken by this kind of air shock wave, he still could not help but gather all his psychic energy and make a defensive move. Because his experience, his common sense, and his intuition were all telling him his opponent was more dangerous than any creature he had ever seen in his life. With a crack, the air wave directly hit the alloy steel pillar and twisted it. Traces of electric sparks emerged from the twisted steel pillar. The burly man widened his eyes and looked in Lianping's direction with a face full of fear. He watched as the air wave directly twisted the steel pillar, broke it, and then swept toward his body. He wanted to beg for mercy, wanted to escape, but the strong wind brought by the air wave directly blew him to the point where he could not even open his eyes. The wind pressure directly pressed all the words he wanted to say back into his mouth. With a bang, the burly man had already exploded into a cloud of bloody mist. The fragments of his organs and bones covered the entire prison cell. After killing this ability user, Lianping discovered that his physical fitness did not increase at all. He said indifferently, "A bunch of trash." He walked into the depths of the prison cell. "Let's go, Yangguang. Let's see if there's anything to surprise me later." On both sides of the prison cell, no one dared to speak. They all swallowed and looked at Lianping stupidly. The few people who had been the most enthusiastic before hid in the shadows of the prison cell in fear. They curled into a ball like kittens, their faces full of fear as they listened to Lianping's footsteps. It was only when Lianping's footsteps gradually disappeared that they dared to walk out. They carefully sized up the depths of the prison cell. Along the way, Lianping saw many ability users. Their strength also increased as they went deeper into the prison cell. From level 0 at the start to level 1 to level 2 and then to level 3 ability users. Most of them were ignored by Lianping. Since they couldn't become his subordinates, he might as well eat a few more clones. However, there was a small portion of them who were calm, had decent abilities, and knew how to adapt to the situation. They were released by Lianping, joining Xia Dragonfinch to increase the number of dragon sparrow guards. What Lianping considered was that no matter how powerful he was, he still needed some experts to serve him. This was especially true if he wanted to manage Xia in the future and establish a new order on this great land. Even though it wasn't absolutely fair, it was at least more fair and superior than the current one. He would definitely need a large amount of experts to help him. Of course, along the way, there were still some malicious provocations or extremely vicious criminals, for example, some rapists, robbers, and murderers from the information Yang Guang gave him. Lianping directly killed them and absorbed them as nutrient. Along the way, after passing through another electronic gate, Lianping finally arrived at the area where the level 4 ability users were locked up. There were 6 coffin-like things in front of him, each coffin covered in a layer of transparent glass, through which he could see people lying inside. They were all level 4 ability users, because ability users of this level were too dangerous. That was why they all used special methods to imprison them. The power they used came from the room's own generator. The power and network were also not connected to the outside world, so the people outside could only monitor and not control them. It was precisely because of this that when Lei Di released all of the prisoners, he didn't release them together. The level 4 ability users in these coffins were all locked up in these coffins 24 hours a day. The coffins were controlled by Xia Dragonfinch's supercomputers and personnel. They would inject nerve anesthetics into the coffins from time to time according to the ability user's physiological condition, making the ability user remain in a state of eternal sleep. Of course, there were some ability users who didn't fear anesthetics, so they used other methods to imprison them. For example, the one in front of Li Anping's eyes. That was a lump of something that looked like a meatball. He was directly placed under the glass cover, in the center of the coffin. Li Anping looked at the display outside the coffin, discovering that the temperature inside the coffin was around -110 degrees. Yang Guang explained from the side, "This is Tang Weihan. His ability is physical transformation. He can transform his body into all kinds of animals and people. Moreover, his body has extremely powerful adaptability. I heard that this ability is extremely useful, capturing him more than 30 years ago. At the time, a lot of effort was put into it. According to research, when his body's temperature reaches -110 degrees, he will enter a state of hibernation. Because the people above felt that this ability user had a lot of research value, they kept him alive. Every month, they would inject him with nutrient fluids." Interesting. When he heard that the other party could transform into all kinds of people and animals, Li Anping immediately thought of how useful this ability was. No wonder the previous leaders couldn't bear to kill him. Thinking of this, Li Anping opened the menu on the display outside the coffin. "Sir, what do you want to do?" Yang Guang looked at Li Anping in bewilderment. "Let me talk to him. After being locked up like this for more than 30 years, he should have figured it out by now." Yang Guang subconsciously wanted to stop Li Anping, but when he thought of the other party's strength, he stopped himself from doing so. With Li Anping's combat strength, Yang Guang believed that this meatball in front of him was definitely not a match for his superior. Moreover, he was also very curious about this ability user. An ability user who could hibernate at -110 degrees for 30 years, the other party's tenacious vitality was indeed praiseworthy. In addition to the ability to transform at will, if he could join Xia Dragonfinch, it would indeed be a great help. Chapter 139. Under Li Anping's manipulation, the temperature inside the coffin gradually rose. -100 degrees, -90 degrees, -80 degrees. Half an hour later, when the temperature rose to -20 degrees, the meatball suddenly shook. A large eyeball squeezed out of the meatball and stared at Li Anping. "Oh, you're actually still alive? Interesting." Li Anping saw the eyeball staring at him. He was not afraid at all. Instead, he showed an excited expression and increased the temperature of the coffin. Yang Guang saw such a strange and powerful life form and unknowingly increased his psychic force to be on guard. 5 minutes later, when the temperature reached -5 degrees, the meatball suddenly began to expand. First, a large flesh spike broke the glass cover of the coffin. Then, the pile of rotten flesh rushed toward Li Anping in front of the coffin. "Interesting." Li Anping smiled and directly grabbed the flesh spike. Then, with a strong fling, he flung the swollen flesh away. With a bang, the meatball hit the wall and made a loud noise. Li Anping shouted, "I'm the current commander of Xia Dragonfinch. Are you Tang Weihan? I want to talk to you." Roar. When the meatball heard the words, Xia Dragonfinch, it violently expanded again. Its hands and feet slowly squeezed out of the meatball. A hairless, thin, short, and deformed human crawled there. He looked at Li Anping with hatred and muttered, "Xia Dragonfinch. Xia Dragonfinch." Li Anping frowned and continued to ask, "Let's talk. If you're willing to join us, you won't be locked up. You'll have a decent job and a certain degree of freedom." "Xia Dragonfinch." The short man roared again. On all fours, he ran toward Li Anping. "I'll kill you, Xia Dragonfinch." Just as Yang Guang was about to make a move, he felt someone gently push his back, and his whole body floated away. "You go to the side first." Lianping pushed Yang Guang aside and slapped Tang Weihan, who was charging at him. Like a fly, the other party was directly slapped to the ground. His head was dizzy and he couldn't stand up at all. "Are you awake?" Lianping asked. Unexpectedly, Tang Weihan let out another roar. He muttered the words, "Desya Dragonfinch," as his hands turned into sharp claws and grabbed at Lianping. Lianping impatiently slapped Tang Weihan again. This time, Tang Weihan's head turned 180 degrees, and he fell to the ground with a thud, unable to get up for a long time. But after a while, when he recovered, he rushed toward Lianping again. After probing for about 10 minutes, Tang Weihan had been slapped more than 20 times. His whole face was a little swollen, but his expression was no longer as crazy as before. He looked at Lianping with eyes full of fear, and he didn't dare to attack anymore. "Are you awake?" Lianping waved his hand and said. Seeing Lianping's hand start to wave, Tang Weihan's eyes flashed with fear. He couldn't help but retreat like a puppy. "Looks like he's crazy," Lianping said to Yang Guang. "It's no wonder. After being tortured like this for 30 years, most people would go crazy." Lianping hooked his finger at Tang Weihan and said, "Come here." Tang Weihan hesitated. He didn't dare to come over, but he was very afraid of Lianping. He didn't dare to not come over, and he looked hesitant. Lianping snorted and frowned. Tang Weihan was immediately shocked. He jumped and crawled to Lianping's feet with a look of fear and trepidation. Lianping roughly understood Tang Weihan's situation. After being frozen for 30 years, his brain seemed to have been damaged. He acted a little like a child. But seeing how he hated Desya Dragonfinch, he should still have some memories, and when he was fighting just now, he turned his hands into animal claws, so he should still be able to use his ability. So Lianping pointed at Yang Guang in the distance and said, "Change into his appearance." Tang Weihan followed Lianping's finger, looked at Yang Guang and nodded. The next moment, the skin on his body trembled, and his whole body began to change. His body became taller, his hands and feet became thicker, and hair grew on his head. In just a few seconds, another Yang Guang appeared in front of Lianping. Other than the real Yang Guang's mechanical hands and feet, the Yang Guang that Tang Weihan had transformed into was no different from the real Yang Guang. However, this perfection was immediately broken by Tang Weihan's fawning look. Yang Guang saw a person who looked exactly like him bending over and giggling at Lianping like a retard. Yang Guang felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. Lianping, on the other hand, was quite satisfied with Tang Weihan's transformation ability. He muttered, "Not bad, but he's a little dumb. He needs more training." After saying that, he walked to another coffin. Inside the coffin was a skinny man, his whole body soaked in liquid. Yang Guang hurriedly introduced him. "This person is called Ponytail. He's a serial killer and rapist. Originally, this matter wasn't under our control, but he's a level 4 ability user. Normal police couldn't do anything to him, so we arrested him." Hearing about Ponytail's deeds, he knew that he was scum. Lianping had no interest in letting him out. He directly threw a punch, and the coffin and Ponytail were instantly turned into a pile of debris. Then, he walked to the next coffin. Seeing Lianping kill Ponytail so simply and violently, Yang Guang and Tang Weihan's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. Especially Tang Weihan, seeing the broken body on the ground and thinking about how he had been attacking Lianping nonstop. He felt even more scared. The next two people were both murderers and arsonists. Their crimes were unforgivable, so Lianping didn't let them out. He let them be imprisoned in this dark underground forever. Of the remaining 3 people, one was called Audrey. Because her ability was very precious, she was a bloodline-type angel. Legend had it that there were less than 5 people alive in the world with this bloodline-type ability user, so she was also captured by Desya Dragonfinch to study the mysteries of this bloodline-type ability. Another one was called Zwamai. His ability was called Death Ray. It belonged to the domain type and could shoot out 5 different kinds of rays from his fingers. The last one was called Yenbei. His ability was a rare external type. Speaking of which, this was the first time Li Anping had seen an external type ability user. Ability users of this type were rare. Their abilities were often illogical and went against the rules of reality. The reason for obtaining the ability was also unknown, so it was difficult to categorize it into the other 5 major types. Therefore, external types were the most chaotic and lawless type. Some of the abilities were very strong, while others were very weak. Yenbei's ability was also very strange. Xia Dragonfinch called it collapse. He could create a field that was constantly shrinking with absolute gravity. Everything within the field would enter an irreversible state of collapse. In the current known world, there were no materials or creatures that could resist Yenbei's attack. Xia Dragonfinch's scientists even speculated that if Yenbei was given enough time, he could even create a real black hole and destroy the entire planet. They couldn't find the reason for this ability from magnetic fields, smell, pheromones, DNA, and other aspects. In the end, they classified Yenbei's ability as an external type. It was also because his ability was extremely dangerous that Xia Dragonfinch decided to imprison him forever. At this time, the coffins that the 3 people were in were opened. Li Anping stood to the side and watched as the 3 people's bodies were injected with the awakening medicine. Yang Guang stood behind him with a face full of caution. Facing these 3 dangerous level 4 ability users, he couldn't be as calm as Li Anping. Tang Weihan, on the other hand, had returned to his original short appearance. He squatted at Li Anping's feet like a small dog and looked at the 3 open coffins with a face full of curiosity. After waiting for a few minutes, Li Anping suddenly said, "How long do you 3 plan to sleep for?" "I'll be direct. You have 3 paths to choose from. The first is to become my subordinate. The second is to be killed by me. The third is to continue staying in the coffins. Then which path do you choose?" Chapter 140. After Li Anping finished speaking, the 3 of them reacted at the same time. First was Audrey, who had the ability of an angel. She slowly stood up from the coffin in a white hospital gown. After being imprisoned for a long time, her face was pale and her limbs were thin. She looked like an undeveloped junior high school student. When she stood up, her body shook and the snow-white wings on her back spread open. They were more than 3 meters long. She really looked like an angel in Western mythology. The next one to stand up was Zwamai. His face was covered in tattoos and he looked like a gangster. He was sizing up Yang Guang and Tang Weihan. As for Li Anping, he didn't care about a level 3 ability user at all. The last one to climb out of the coffin was Yenbei. His hair was messy and his face was covered in a beard. After climbing out, he looked around and walked towards the door. Yang Guang was the first to jump out and yelled, "Yenbei, didn't you hear what the officer said?" "Shut up." Yenbei waved his hand and a transparent force field covered Yang Guang. In the nick of time, Li Anping pulled Yang Guang out. Even so, Yang Guang's mechanical limbs were all forcefully torn apart. 1 second later, the force field disappeared, and only a large piece of the metal floor could be seen where the force field covered. They had all been crushed into powder by the collapsing force field. What a terrifying ability! Yang Guang looked at Yenbei with lingering fear. They were both level 4 ability users, but Yenbei could kill him instantly with his superior ability. This kind of collapsing ability, if it were to directly take on the physical body, it was likely that most level 5 ability users would be heavily injured, or even killed instantly. No wonder he was locked up. His ability is too dangerous. When Yenbei saw Li Anping pull Yang Guang away and dodge his fatal attack, he seemed to be surprised. He muttered, "You were the one who let me out?" Audrey and Zwamai quietly retreated to the corner of the room. They weren't like Yen Bei, who had been locked up until now. They just wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. They didn't want to be involved in Yen Bei's battle. Looks like you've been sleeping for too long and your brain isn't working well. Lianping put Yang Guang back on the ground and handed him to Tang Weihan. Then, he stepped in front of Yen Bei and grabbed his hand. He threw Yen Bei to the ground like he was throwing a pancake. There was a loud rumble. Lianping was too fast, and Yen Bei could not react in time. All he could do was maintain the shape of the Chinese character, as he crashed into the floor. Like a fly that was hit by a fly swatter. That slap made Yen Bei feel pain all over his body. It was as if all his bones had been broken. His body was completely numb, and he could not use his limbs. There was also the taste of blood in his mouth. Yen Bei was furious. He roared, "I'm going to kill you!" More than 20 collapsing force fields appeared around Yen Bei. The strong gravitational force destroyed everything around him. A large amount of equipment was turned into metal slag. The base was even filled with alarms. Although Yen Bei's ability was fast, it was not as fast as Lianping. When the collapsing force fields appeared, Lianping was already far away from where he was. When the collapsing force fields destroyed everything and disappeared, he was already in front of Yen Bei again. Lianping reached out his right hand and grabbed Yen Bei's neck. He lifted him up and looked into his eyes. "Do you want to die that badly?" His right hand tightened. Yen Bei's neck made cracking sounds as if it was going to break at any time. At that moment, Yen Bei's eyes finally regained their clarity. However, he felt like his heart was about to stop. His life was completely in Lianping's hands. He could kill him at any time. Yen Bei felt like he was being strangled by the Grim Reaper. Lin Huang's ability was only the tip of the iceberg. However, he was already stronger than him. Humph! Seeing the fear in Yen Bei's eyes, Lianping scoffed and threw him to the ground. This time, however, Yen Bei did not complain at all. He just stood there dumbly, not knowing what to do. On the other hand, Zhuo Mai was the first to kneel. He shouted at Lianping, "Master, I'm willing to serve you." Audrey, on the other hand, flapped her wings and flew toward the door. Yen Bei's ability had destroyed the prison cell's electronic door. Audrey was extremely fast when she flew. That was the angel's strength, which was flying speed. They could fly at subsonic speeds for a day and a night. In a battle, the ability to fly at high speed was a great help to them. But this time, before she could fly more than 10 meters, a strong hand had already grabbed her wings and pulled her down. The tremendous force pulled Audrey, who was flying at high speed, down. She screamed and felt as if her wings were about to be torn apart. She fell heavily to the ground. Yen Bei saw that Lianping had grabbed Audrey's wings and smashed her to the ground. He shrunk his neck and looked like he could not bear to see her like that. He could feel how painful it was for him to be smashed to the ground by Lianping. Looking at Audrey, who was lying on the ground, unable to stand up, Lianping patted the dust off his hands and said calmly, "Can't any of you understand human language?" Yen Bei heard him and immediately knelt on one knee. He said nervously, "I'm willing to serve you, master." Lianping nodded and looked at Audrey. He did not think much of this woman. Her ability was much weaker than Yen Bei and Zhuo Mai. Her biggest use was that she was a bloodline type. It was much easier to clone her. She was a good experimental material. Hearing Yen Bei and Lianping's words, Audrey forced herself to lie on the ground. She raised her head and looked at Lianping sadly. "I can be loyal to you too. I'm willing to serve you, but you have to give me enough freedom." Lianping shrugged. "No problem." At that moment, a large number of guards ran in from the corridor outside the prison cell. Lu Xing, who was in the lead, looked at the half-destroyed prison cell and asked, "Master, are you okay?" Lianping shook his head. "I'm fine. Get someone to fix this place. Take them to Li Qian." After that, Lianping ordered Li Qian to use her ability to monitor Audrey and the other two. Then, they each collected a blood sample and sent it to Shirwan in the 8th Research Institute. In the office, Li Anping was scanning Li Qian's newspaper. Sun Hao suddenly barged in. He looked at Li Anping angrily and asked, "Why did you release so many people from the prison? They're very useful." Li Anping calmly put the newspaper back into the drawer and said slowly, "Xia Dragonfinch is short of manpower now. Instead of letting them rot in prison, why don't they come out and contribute?" "But they're all criminals," Sun Hao said unhappily. "I think you're becoming more and more extreme. I'm just more aware of the reality. What I did in the past, even if I worked hard for 100 years, I wouldn't be able to completely change this world. What they need is a brand new order." Li Anping still had some patience for Sun Hao. He explained, "And I only released some people who were convicted of lesser crimes, or even wronged." Sun Hao reluctantly accepted Li Anping's explanation, and left. Seeing Sun Hao's back as he walked out of the office, Li Anping thought that if Sun Hao knew what he was doing now, especially about the dark side of the 8th Research Institute, he would probably fall out with him. Maybe I should transfer him away from Tianjing. Li Anping didn't want to lose Sun Hao as a friend. However, it was absolutely impossible for him to stop, because he needed more power, until this power could wipe out everything and allow him to establish a new order in this world. Even if the source of this power was so evil. As Li Anping killed more and more people, his ability became stronger and stronger, and his pursuit of justice in his heart became lower and lower. He would annihilate evil, but when justice got in his way, he didn't mind smashing the other party into pieces. While thinking, Li Anping's black psychic qi emerged from behind him again. He murmured, "Again?" The black psychic qi behind him formed a human figure again. The difference was that this time, the black figure had a pair of eyes. That pair of eyes didn't move at all. They just stared straight at Li Anping, giving off a creepy feeling. But this time, Li Anping still couldn't communicate with the black figure, nor could he control it. After a few minutes, the figure disappeared. The only change was the pair of black eyes. Li Anping found that after the figure appeared recently, it lasted longer and longer. Unable to come up with any results, Li Anping took out the newspaper again and began to scan the information of the person who was monitoring him. Just then, the phone rang. It was Lu Feng, Xia Dragonfinch's director of intelligence. During the battle with Lei Di, he had used his ability to change faces to lure him. At this moment, his voice sounded a bit worried. "The Dragon Sparrow Guards sent by Gushan City have disappeared again. This time, including the last time, there are a total of 15 people. Among them, there is a level 4 ability user sent for the second time." Chapter 141. People came and went at the Tianjing railway station. There was an endless stream of people from all walks of life, working, going home, traveling, and visiting relatives. Mixed in the crowd, a short young man followed the crowd and walked out of the station. The young man's clothes were all branded, but they didn't fit him well. He looked like a boy who came from the countryside to work in Tianjing and was wearing fake goods. However, his smart and cunning eyes gave people a feeling that he was very smart and cunning. The young man's name was Zhou Kong. He was an orphan from Baishui village, Hualu Township, outside Gushan City. This was also his first time in such a big city like Tianjing. However, he was different from other young men who came to Tianjing for the first time. Zhou Kong didn't go to school. He didn't even finish primary school, but he was very rich. He never cared about money. Anyway, as long as he wanted to, money wasn't a problem. However, for him, it was fine as long as he had enough money. For example, he spent more than 20,000 yuan to buy the branded sportswear he was wearing. He also knew that he was probably cheated by the store owner, but he didn't care. Anyway, money was for him to use. As for Zhou Kang's purpose in coming to Tianjing, one was to see the capital of Xia. The other was because 5 people came to his village to catch him some time ago. He spent a lot of effort to kill them one by one. However, it didn't take long for another 10 people to come. They were also ability users. This time, the people who came were more powerful, especially a few of them, who were only a little bit weaker than him. Unfortunately, a little bit was still a little bit. They were all killed by Zhou Kong. In the past 10 years, Zhou Kong, who had ability, had always felt that he was very lonely. He was an anomaly in this world. He even wondered if he was an alien. Until some time ago when he met these 15 people of the same kind. Unfortunately, these people were all enemies who came to catch him and hurt him. After Zhou Kong killed these 15 people, he checked their information and documents and found that they all came from an organization called Xia Dragonfinch. The headquarters was in Tianjing. The second purpose of his visit this time was to find the people of this organization. He wanted to ask them why they sent people to catch him. If they were unwilling to reconcile, Zhou Kong decided to destroy this organization. However, he still decided to give them a chance. After all, they were all the same. Zhou Kong began to look forward to meeting his own kind. As for killing people, Zhou Kong didn't care at all. Ever since he awakened his ability, he had killed quite a number of people. However, he had never been punished by the law. For someone like him who had the ability, the law was meaningless, because only those who were caught by the police would be punished by the law, and he would never be caught. But how should I find him? Zhou Kong scratched the back of his head and began to think. Therefore, for the next few days, Zhou Kong wandered the streets and alleys of Tianjing City. As he traveled, he secretly inquired about Xia Dragonfinch. Because he was not a professional intelligence officer, he gave himself away a lot of things. However, Zhou Kong did not care at all. He was very confident in his ability, especially as he grew older. His ability was getting stronger and stronger. Now, even if he was surrounded by an army, he would not be afraid. However, if he was really wanted, his life would be very troublesome. He didn't know any foreign languages and didn't want to escape abroad. On the other side, in the office of the Secret Service, Antero also received a report. Oh? Zhou Kong? Isn't this the person Xia Dragonfinch went to Gushan City to catch? Antero was surprised to see the report on Zhou Kang's whereabouts for the past few days. Why is he in Tianjing? Antero was puzzled. And he's still asking around about Xia Dragonfinch? He's already been targeted by several departments. One of his men said, I heard that the people Xia Dragonfinch sent to Gushan City have all disappeared. Sir, do you think we should tell them about Zhou Kong? Antero thought for a moment and said, Tell them. He's probably an ability user. If he can make the people sent by Xia Dragonfinch disappear, he might be quite powerful. Let's let the professionals deal with him. When the Secret Service passed the news to Li Anping, Zhou Kang's investigation of Xia Dragonfinch finally made new progress. He quietly followed behind a young girl, his pair of eyes somewhat drooling as he looked at the other person's back. Zhou Kong had been following her for almost half an hour. He wanted to go up and say a few words, but he did not know what to say. After following her for a few more streets, Zhou Kong suddenly realized that the young girl had turned into an alley, so he followed her in. Unexpectedly, as soon as he entered the alley, the young girl walked out from behind him. Zhou Kong felt something like a baton pressed against his waist. Xia Yunyun looked at Zhou Kong with a guarded expression and asked, Who are you? I'm holding a high-voltage electric baton in my hand. If you don't want to be paralyzed, you'd better tell me the truth. Zhou Kong, on the other hand, looked indifferent because the stun baton was completely useless to him. Miss, I'm sorry. I just feel that there's a power in your body that's very similar to mine. Zhou Kong asked with some embarrassment, May I ask if you're also an ability user? Xia Yunyun did not expect the other party to ask this question. She did not feel the existence of any qi from Zhou Kang's body, nor did she think that the other party was an ability user. Haha, I might be a little rude to ask this, but this is the first time I've met someone of the same kind, so I wanted to get to know you. Zhou Kang saw that Xia Yunyun did not answer, so he spoke again. Xia Yunyun sized him up and thought, there's no trace of qi at all. Is he a level 0 ability user? But shouldn't level 0 ability users not be able to sense qi? How did he sense that I'm an ability user? Xia Yunyun did not know that Zhou Kang had the reinforced iron bones ability. Because of this ability, his qi was all hidden inside his body to strengthen his body's defense. Therefore, other ability users were completely unable to sense his qi. After some thought, Xia Yunyun put away the electric baton. After all, the other party did not seem to have any ill intentions. She said casually, I'm an ability user, but you'd better not ask about this kind of thing. Taking the initiative to ask about an ability user's identity is a big taboo. Oh. Zhou Kang nodded and said, thank you for your reminder. My name is Zhou Kang. I've never met other ability users before, so I don't know how to deal with them. Speaking of which, I came to Tianjing this time to look for an organization called the Xia Dragonfinch. May I ask if you know anything about it? In the Xia Long K base, Li Anping opened an email on his computer. It contained information about Zhou Kang and his detailed information. Zhou Kang had awakened his ability 5 years ago. Originally, he was just a hooligan in the countryside. One day, he suddenly awakened his ability. Then, relying on his ability, he raped a woman in the same village and even killed the woman's husband. Because he still had the mentality of an ordinary person at that time, he chose to run away. However, it was also because of this incident that he entered the government's sights. After that, Zhou Kang was connected to a few cases of robbery, extortion, kidnapping, and other crimes one after another. However, as he grew older, his ability became stronger and stronger, and he became more and more careful when committing crimes. The police basically could not do anything to him. This time, when the Xia Dragonfinch received the news, Li Anping sent the Dragon Sparrow Guards to capture him. He did not expect that out of the 15 Dragon Sparrow Guards, including 2 level 4 ability users, not a single one had returned. Every ability user had a huge value, not to mention that Li Anping had lost 15 of them all at once. Seeing that Zhou Kang had actually come to Tianjing to inquire about the Xia Dragonfinch, Li Anping laughed coldly and directly called Lu Xing. Lu Xing, I'll send you an email right now. Directly send 3 level 4 ability users to capture this guy. Then send him directly to me at the base. Yes, it's fine if he's injured, but don't kill him. I want him alive. After hanging up the phone, Li Anping looked at the other party's ability evaluation again. Regarding Zhou Kang's ability, he was not very sure. The contents of the report were more of a guess. The staff who analyzed Zhou Kang, based on the information that the police had been tracking him for the past few years, as well as his criminal record, believed that Zhou Kang was a multiple ability user who had more than 4 abilities in total. Looking at the information, Li Anping's mouth gradually revealed a trace of a smile. Interesting, he called Lu Xing again and said, you don't have to send him here. Send him directly to the 8th Research Institute. Chapter 142. Xia Yunyun looked at Zhou Kang in surprise. She found it strange that he was here to look for the Xia Dragonfinch. Why are you looking for the Xia Dragonfinch? Do you know? Zhou Kang grinned and said, they sent people to capture me last time, but I defeated them. Later, they sent people again. Although they couldn't defeat me, it would be troublesome if they kept sending people to deal with me, wouldn't it? So, I decided to look for them myself. After Zhou Kang finished speaking, there was a smug expression on his face. Don't look at me just because I look small. I'm very strong. What? Xia Yunyun was shocked, but she didn't show it on the surface. She asked tentatively, "Is that so? The Xia Dragonfinch is very strong. What's your ability?" "Is that so?" Zhou Kong grinned and said, "I think their ability is very strong, but I'm even stronger. However, I can't tell you what my ability is." Xia Yunyun smiled and said, "That's true. However, I'm not very familiar with the Xia Dragonfinch. I'll ask my friend for you. He knows more." As she said that, she took out her phone and dialed Li Anping's number. "I don't know where this guy came from, but he's probably quite good to be able to defeat the ability user sent by the Xia Dragonfinch. I'd better call Li Anping and let him send people over." Just as Xia Yunyun was thinking about these things, she suddenly heard Zhou Kong say, "Oh? Who is Li Anping?" "Oh, Li Anping is, of course." Halfway through her sentence, Xia Yunyun suddenly looked up at Zhou Kong and said in disbelief, "How did you know? How would I know what you're thinking?" Zhou Kong grinned and said, "I can read his mind. I can know what you're thinking." He continued, "How is that possible? We have to inform Li Anping as soon as possible. Is that what you're thinking? Oh. So this Li Anping is the Xia Dragonfinch's boss." As he spoke, Zhou Kong grabbed Xia Yunyun's phone and said, "Then let me talk to him." Li Anping was on his way out of the base when he suddenly felt his phone vibrate. He took it out and saw that it was a call from Xia Yunyun. This was the first time he had received a call from Xia Yunyun. Turning on the phone, Li Anping asked, "Hello, why did you call me?" An unfamiliar man's voice came from the phone. "Hello? Are you Li Anping? Who are you?" Li Anping frowned and asked coldly, "Where is Li Qian?" He, I'm asking you a question. Are you Li Anping? The Xia Dragonfinch's boss?" Zhou Kong asked maliciously, "Where are you? I'll come and find you." "Find me?" Li Anping was puzzled. "Yes, tell me where you are. I'll come and find you." Zhou Kong laughed and said, "Don't run away. Otherwise, I don't know what I'll do. This big sister is very attractive." Xia Yunyun's struggling and whimpering voice came from the phone. She cried, "Li Anping. Whoa." Then came Zhou Kang's voice. "Tell me, where are you? Run away." Li Anping's voice was like a 10,000-year-old iceberg. The intersection of 13th Avenue and 12th Avenue. "I'll wait for you there. However, whether you can see me or not depends on whether you can reach here." Zhou Kong laughed and hung up the phone. However, he noticed that Xia Yunyun was glaring at him fiercely. He said helplessly, "I'm sorry, big sister. I also want to get rid of this Xia Dragonfinch, once and for all. When I see Li Anping, I'll let you go." Xia Yunyun listened to Zhou Kang's words and rolled her eyes. She looked at Zhou Kong as if she was looking at a dead person. "Big sister, you're very powerful. After many people know that I can read minds, the more they don't want to reveal something, the more they can't help but think. As a result, you immediately started counting. Now your mind is full of 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Zhou Kong was annoyed by her mocking gaze and explained again, "I know it's hard for you to understand. But you'll know later that my ability is far beyond your imagination." He showed a confident expression and looked at the tall buildings in Tianjin. His eyes were full of appreciation and admiration. "I used to stay in Gushan. I didn't expect there to be such a prosperous city in the world." Zhou Kong laughed. "I've decided to stay here in the future. Tianjin is much more fun than Gushan." Xia Yunyun couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him and kept counting silently in her heart. After all, he was no match for Zhou Kong. He could ask Li Anping to come and save him. However, if Zhou Kong found out about Li Anping's power through his mind and ambushed, escaped, or used him to threaten Li Anping, then it would be troublesome. Zhou Kong completely believed in his own power, which was the best for Xia Yunyun. Zhou Kong didn't care. He knew that ordinary people would never think that a human could be as strong as him without seeing it with their own eyes. In the past, the police, the triads, and the rich all thought so, but they were all bullied badly by him. Therefore, Zhou Kong took a taxi and directly took Xia Yunyun to the place Lian Ping told him. On the other side, Tang Weihan, Zhuo Mai, and Yan Bei had been out of de Xia Dragonfinch's base for more than an hour. Zhuo Mai was driving a car, and Yan Bei and Tang Weihan were sitting in the back. At this moment, Tang Weihan's appearance had changed greatly after the nourishment. He had become a young and adorable teenager. He probably changed his appearance through an ability user. Yan Bei didn't know if he really looked like this when he was young. Yan Bei, who was beside him, had also shaved his beard and combed his hair. He looked like a middle-aged man. He and Tang Weihan were both people who had been locked up in de Xia Long K base for a long time. At this moment, when they came back to the surface again, they couldn't help but feel emotional. Looking at the tall buildings in front of them, they let out a cry of surprise from time to time. However, Zhuo Mai, who was driving, didn't feel that way at all. He was only caught a few years ago. Although Tianjing had changed a lot, it wasn't enough to surprise him. Yan Bei asked, "How much longer? Where's that Zhou Kong?" Zhuo Mai didn't dare to make this terrifying person angry. He comforted him, "Soon. That Zhou Kong keeps moving around. I think we'll be able to find him the next time we locate him." Damn that guy. Yan Bei's tone was full of annoyance. He wasted so much of my time. When I find him, I'll break his legs. Suddenly, Tang Weihan's phone rang. He took out his phone in a hurry. He wanted to press it, but he didn't know how to press it. "Give it to me." Yan Bei grabbed the phone impatiently. "Hello? Yan Bei? I'm Lu Xing." Lu Xing's voice came from the other side of the phone. "According to various sources, we have Zhou Kang's latest location. He's in a taxi now. He's going to the intersection of 12th Avenue and 13th Avenue. You can stop him at the north of 12th Avenue." "Why do we have to stop him?" Yan Bei asked. "We can just wait for him at the destination." "Really?" Lu Xing smiled mischievously. "Master Lian Ping is waiting for someone there. Do you want him to be disturbed? It was during your first mission." Yan Bei gulped. He seemed to be reminded of the scene where he was beaten up by Lian Ping. His body that was healed seemed to be in pain again. "I understand. I won't let him go there. Also, Zhou Kong has a female hostage with him. Her safety must be guaranteed. This is the master's latest order." Yan Bei shouted, "I understand." He hung up and threw the phone back to Tang Weihan. Yan Bei said with a cold expression, "Zhuo Mai, did you hear that?" "Yes." Zhuo Mai nodded seriously. "Then hurry up." Yan Bei said anxiously, "Damn it, I don't want to see that B** start again. We have to hurry over and catch that bastard Zhou Kong." Tang Weihan, who was on the side, also nodded. He hadn't spoken for a long time, so he stuttered. His voice came from his throat. "Hurry! Hurry up!" "Got it." Zhuo Mai stomped hard on the accelerator. The whole car rushed out at a speed of more than 100 kilometers per hour. It overtook one car after another. It even ran a few red lights and almost caused an accident. In the back seat, the two people who were traumatized didn't have time to look at the scenery. They both focused on the taxis around them. The chi on their bodies burned like flames. They were afraid that when they saw Zhou Kong, they would pounce on him like two tigers and tear him to pieces. Chapter 143. Zhou Kong and Xia Yunyun sat in a taxi and traveled along the 12 Great Road. Unfortunately, just as they were about 1 kilometer away from their destination, a dense crowd of cars appeared in front of them, completely blocking the road. The taxi driver turned around and kindly reminded them, "There's nothing we can do about it. It's rush hour right now and there's a big traffic jam. There's still about 1 kilometer left. Why don't you guys get off and walk over? At this time, it's still faster to walk over than to take my car." "So this is the traffic jam?" Zhou Kong looked curiously at the road that was filled with cars. He smiled and said, "Thanks, uncle. Since we're almost there, let's just get off and walk over." A few minutes later, Xia Yunyun followed behind Zhou Kong. They maintained a strolling pace as they walked toward the intersection of the 12 Great Roads and the 13 Great Road. Along the way there was a sea of people everywhere, jostling shoulder to shoulder. Even so, Xia Yunyun wanted to run away several times, but she did not manage to do so. It was as if there was a voice in her heart that kept telling her that there was no way she could escape. There was absolutely no way she could escape. "Elder sister, you're right." Zhou Kong turned around and said with a smile, "If you want to escape, there's absolutely no way you can escape. So, just follow me obediently. Once we find that Li Anping, I'll let you go." Hearing Zhou Kang's words, Xia Yunyun felt gloomy. In any case, she was still a level 3 ability user. Although her ability was not very useful and could only communicate with animals, she could not even order them around. However, if she only relied on her qi, ordinary people would not be able to get close to her at all. However, Song Tian from before and now Zhou Kong, each and every one of them were ability users who were stronger than her. As a result, she needed Li Anping to save her. She had completely become a burden. "Who's Song Tian?" Zhou Kong asked. Xia Yunyun felt a burst of anger in her heart, but she could only try her best to control herself and not think too much about it. She started counting again. Right at this moment, Zhou Kong suddenly turned his head abruptly, his eyes staring straight behind Xia Yunyun. Just 50 meters behind Xia Yunyun, among the crowd, 3 arrogant and domineering Psyche Chi soared into the sky. The overwhelming malice pressed down on Zhou Kong, as if wanting to destroy him completely. A bloodthirsty smile appeared on Yan Bei's face. "I finally found you. Die!" As he pointed his finger, a miniature collapsed space appeared on Zhou Kang's head. However, as soon as he pointed his finger, Zhou Kang's expression changed drastically as he retreated. Due to Yan Bei's appearance and attack, he had already understood the ability that Yan Bei used through mind reading and the effect of the ability. "These 3 guys are so powerful. Each of them might be even more powerful than the people who came to Gu Mountain to capture me." Zhou Kong immediately darted into the crowd and started to think of countermeasures. "I'll hide in the crowd first. Relying on my mind-reading ability, I can defeat them one by one." On the other hand, when Yan Bei saw Zhou Kong hiding in the crowd, he scolded impatiently and shouted, "Left vein, protect that woman. Tang Weihan, follow him closely." Then he laughed maniacally and said, "I'll clear the place." He waved his hands wildly and countless collapsed spaces appeared on the street lamps, shop signs, the ground and other places. The entire road was plunged into chaos in an instant. The collapses caused electrical wires to break, shop signs to be damaged, roads to crack, water pipes to explode, and so on. All sorts of explosions and shock waves appeared. Although there were no casualties, the crowd was immediately in chaos. When ordinary people saw this situation, they immediately started to run away. However, compared to this, the chaos that Tang Weihan caused was even greater. No one knew what he was thinking. After hearing Yan Bei's words, he also roared toward the sky. Then, his body underwent intense changes. Tang Weihan's body continued to grow taller. At the same time, his head turned into a wolf's head, and his hands and feet turned into 4 claws. He had turned into a werewolf monster and charged toward Zhou Kong. "Monster! Quick, run! The monster is here to eat people! Oh my God!" When the surrounding people saw Tang Weihan turn into such a monster, they ran even faster. In an instant, everyone within a few hundred meters had run away. When Zhou Kong saw Tang Weihan charging toward him, his eyes narrowed. Suddenly, he rushed toward Xia Yunyun. The 3 of them were very strong. If he could use Xia Yunyun as a hostage, his chances of winning would greatly increase. Seeing Yan Bei and Tang Weihan's performance, Zhuomai shook his head helplessly. Two idiots. After saying that, he pointed his right index finger. A red ray shot toward Xia Yunyun. With a whoosh, the red ray brushed past Xia Yunyun's waist. Wherever it passed, the air was scorching hot. After the ray passed by Xia Yunyun, it directly traveled hundreds of meters and melted a large piece of the cement ground. Xia Yunyun was so scared that she screamed and immediately ran behind Zhuomai and the others. At the same time, Zhuomai's ray also forced Zhou Kong, who was rushing toward Xia Yunyun, to retreat. This was the power of the mind-reading ability. With this ability, almost no one could plot against Zhou Kong. Even if Zhuomai's death ray and Yan Bei's collapse could severely injure Zhou Kong once, they still had to hit him. On the other side, when Zhou Kong was forced back by Zhuomai, Tang Weihan finally rushed up. He opened his mouth and bit toward Zhou Kang's shoulder. Unexpectedly, when faced with Tang Weihan's attack, Zhou Kong did not dodge at all. Instead, he allowed Tang Weihan to bite his shoulder. He laughed coldly in his heart. My body is made of steel and iron. Let alone being bitten by you, even if I were to take a bullet head-on, it wouldn't be a problem. Crunch, crunch. Tang Weihan realized that he could not bite Zhou Kong no matter how hard he bit. Zhou Kong was as hard as a piece of iron. Then, Zhou Kang's punch landed on Tang Weihan's stomach. Zhou Kang's strength far exceeded Tang Weihan's imagination. This punch caused him to foam at the mouth as he whimpered. Then, Zhou Kong grabbed his head and threw him out. Useless thing. Seeing that Tang Weihan had failed, Yan Bei sneered. He shouted toward Zhou Kang's position with both hands, "Turn into a scum." A terrifying aura came from the void. In the next second, where Zhou Kong was, in a spherical space with a diameter of 5 meters, everything was crushed into a ball under the power of the collapse. Then, it turned into countless particles and floated in the air. Even the ground turned into a big pit. The surface of the pit seemed to have been cut by a tool, showing a smooth surface. Haha, he's dead. Yan Bei looked at the empty space where there was only a big round pit and smiled in disdain. Suddenly, Zhuomai reminded him, "Be careful, he's above." In midair, Zhou Kong was glaring at Yan Bei angrily. This was the first time he was in such a sorry state ever since he awakened his ability. If he did not have the ability to fly at high speed and escape before the space collapsed, he would have died just now. Go to hell! He shouted and threw a punch toward Yan Bei's face across the air. There was no fluctuation of psychic force, no shockwave, and no flame or lightning power. However, even so, Yan Bei felt a pain in his stomach and was sent flying by the punch. This was another ability of Zhou Kang's. He could transmit his power through the air without any damage. In other words, he could transmit his power through the air directly to his opponent's body with a punch. However, when he wanted to throw another punch at Yan Bei, 3 consecutive red rays shot toward him. Zhou Kong could only give up on attacking and quickly flew to the side to dodge the 3 rays. However, Zhuomai did not seem to hold back anymore. With a flick of his 10 fingers, rays shot towards Zhuomai, who was flying around in the air. Some of these rays could melt steel, some were full of cold air, and some were full of radiation. Faced with these powerful and fast rays, Zhou Kong could only dodge again and again. He was extremely frustrated. He wanted to rush towards Zhuomai several times, but once he got closer, the rays became faster and more densely intertwined. He had no choice but to retreat. Then, Yan Bei got up from the ground and clutched his stomach. His eyes were filled with madness. "Damn it, I'm going to kill you!" Boom! A stream of psychic force emerged from Yan Bei's body. Yan Bei raised his hands high and a force that could change the color of everything came out of his hands. Yan Bei waved his hands crazily, and more than 10 collapsing force fields appeared around Zhou Kong. They almost crushed him into dust. On the other side, Tang Weihan also let out a wild cry. The flesh on his back suddenly burst open, and 2 wings stretched out from his back. His entire person had turned into a werewolf with bat wings. Then, he flapped his wings forcefully and rose into the air, charging toward Zhou Kong, who was flying back and forth. This time, Zhou Kong was besieged by 3 people. Although his flying speed was very fast and he could predict other people's attacks in advance, whether it was Yan Bei or left vein, their collapse or death was extremely fast. Tang Weihan, on the other hand, relied on his ability to transform and his fearless body to tangle with Zhou Kong. In less than a minute, Zhou Kong was already struggling. In order to avoid the death ray and collapsing force field attacks, he began to take on Tang Weihan's ferocious attacks head-on. Although Tang Weihan's strength was not as strong as his, and he had reinforced iron bones, his body began to ache from the constant heavy blows and claws. In addition, in order to avoid Yan Bei's collapsing attack just now, Zhou Kang's right hand was grazed by Zhuo Mai's death ray. A burning sensation came from his palm, making him feel a sharp pain in his entire right hand, as if it was being roasted by fire all the time. Zhou Kong immediately had the thought of retreating. Are these guys all lunatics? Why does the Xia Dragonfinch have so many powerful metahumans? At this moment, Zhou Kang's chest was filled with regret. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Why did I come to Tianjing to look for this damned great Xia Dragonfinch? That's right. I'm quite happy hiding in Gushan. Suddenly, he roared into the sky and spread his power through the air, attacking Yan Bei and the other 2's organs. Yan Bei and the other 2 felt as if they had been struck by lightning. They felt as if their chests had been punched by a big hammer. If it were not for the protection of their psychic force, they would have been killed directly. However, Zhou Kong also took this opportunity to leave quickly. In mid-air, he was like an arrow that had been released from a bow, leaving behind a series of afterimages as he flew toward the south. Damn it, why are there so many powerful people in this world? Zhou Kong, who had been forced to flee by the 3 of them, was furious. This was the first time he had been suppressed to the point that he had no choice but to flee. Furthermore, they were also metahumans. Since he was young, he had always thought that he was special, that he was the only one. At the same time, he had the ability to read minds, fly, strengthen his body of iron, and conduct air. He had always thought that he had the strongest ability in the world. However, not long after he had arrived in Tianjing, he had been defeated by the combined forces of 3 people. In particular, the man who had performed the collapsing attack was the greatest threat to him. No, it's impossible for there to be so many powerful people in the world. These 3 guys must be the strongest people in the Xia Dragonfinch. This Xia Dragonfinch might even be the most powerful organization of ability users in the world. Zhou Kong said hatefully, "It's hard for me to win against the 3 of them together, but they'll split up eventually. When that happens, I'll kill them one by one." Just as Zhou Kong was thinking about how to deal with Yan Bei and the other 2, a large group of people appeared in front of him. All of them were pointing at him in midair. It turned out that Zhou Kong had already flown away from the place where the crowd had been cleared out. "Look, someone's flying. Mom, there's someone flying above us. Damn, it can't be a stunt, right?" Looking at the ordinary people under his feet who were like ants, Zhou Kong felt disdain. However, he soon frowned. There was a guy in the crowd who was very special. He had a special power and seemed to be an ability user as well. However, his power waves were much weaker than those of the previous few people. This level of power made him feel much more satisfied. That's right, this was the real world. How could there be powerful people who were not much weaker than him? Zhou Kong stopped in midair and asked the man in the crowd, "Hey, are you also from the Xia Dragonfinch?" As long as the other party answered yes, Zhou Kong planned to kill him to vent his anger. My name is Lianping," the man narrowed his eyes and said as he looked at Zhou Kong coldly. Chapter 144. Zhou Kong looked at Lianping under his feet and laughed out loud. "You're so unlucky. I'm in a bad mood now, and you're right in front of me. I'm going to twist your head off." It's useless even if you kneel down and apologize now. Lianping looked at Zhou Kong and threw a punch. When Zhou Kong reacted, the terrifying punch had already brushed past his ear and rushed toward the sky. The huge force even caused him to temporarily lose his hearing. The huge force compressed the air and formed a shockwave. The shockwave went straight to the sky. Wherever it passed, the atmosphere hummed and the glass on the surrounding buildings shattered at the same time. In the sky, the clouds were torn apart, revealing a huge hole with a diameter of more than 100 meters. The dark blue sky was revealed from the hole. Zhou Kong stared blankly at the huge hole in the sky and was speechless. After Lianping sent out this punch and shattered the glass of the building, the surrounding crowd had already scattered while yelling. Only the dazed Zhou Kong and the cold-faced Lianping were left on the road. Lianping swung his fist and said, "What did you say just now? I didn't hear it clearly. Can you say it again?" Zhou Kong gulped and felt his mind go blank. He did not know what to say. The power displayed by his opponent was completely beyond his imagination. It was a power that made him unable to resist at all. He carefully landed and stood in front of Lianping. After hesitating for a long time, he finally said, "You won't kill me, right?" "Not yet." Lianping sneered and suddenly turned to look behind Zhou Kong. 100 meters away, Yan Bei, Zhuomai, and Tang Weihan looked hesitant. They did not know if they should come over. Lianping gestured at them with his finger, and the three of them reluctantly walked up. Tang Weihan also retracted his wings and wolf head, returning to his previous appearance of a sunny young man. Lianping revealed a look of interest when he saw this. "You can change like that?" Lianping asked curiously. "Can you become like Audrey? Or demons?" Tang Weihan nodded and looked at Lianping carefully. Yes. However, this kind of fantasy creature needs more practice to become good." Lianping nodded and glanced at Yan Bei and Zhuomai. When the latter felt his gaze, they did not dare to look him in the eye. They subconsciously looked to the side or the ground. Lianping did not take it to heart either and said coolly, "Such a simple thing, and you can even mess it up. Send Zhou Kong to the 8th Research Institute first, and then the three of you will go and find Lu Xing. Each of you will be grounded for 15 days. The left pulse will be grounded for 10 days. Yes. The three of them did not dare to resist. After receiving the order, they quickly left with Zhou Kong, especially Yan Bei and Tang Weihan. The two of them held Zhou Kong on both sides and walked very quickly. When they first woke up from the dungeon, because they had slept for too long, their minds were not clear. They were taught the worst by Lianping. It could be said that they were the ones who were most afraid of Lianping in the entire Xia Dragonfinch. Usually, as long as Lianping was around, the two of them would not be seen unless absolutely necessary. Therefore, perhaps because they were in the same boat, the two of them got along well. As for Zhou Kong, he was like a tamed puppy from the beginning. He did not have any intention to resist at all. As for whether he would resist when he arrived at the 8th Research Institute, Lianping believed that the security there was enough to stop him. Lianping. After the three of them left, Xia Yunyun also walked in front of Lianping. She looked at him seriously and said, "Thank you." Lianping nodded and turned to leave. Unexpectedly, Xia Yunyun suddenly stopped in front of him and asked, "Are you avoiding me?" "No." Lianping turned his face away. "Then why haven't you been home recently? How many days has it been since I last saw you?" Xia Yunyun shouted loudly. She looked like a resentful woman who had been neglected for a long time. There were many people in blue and white uniforms on the side. They were Xia Dragonfinch's people who were in charge of dealing with the aftermath. Some of them were proficient in hypnosis or similar abilities. They were able to erase the memories of most of the witnesses in time. At this time, when they heard Xia Yunyun's shout, they could not help but look at Lianping. In particular, some of the beautiful team members had a bitter look on their faces. However, when Lianping's gaze swept over them, they immediately turned their heads back and went back to work. That's right. Now that you have so many beautiful women who like you and let you taste them, of course you're not interested in me, Xia Yunyun said faintly. When Li Anping heard Xia Yunyun's words, he said helplessly, I've been very busy recently. If you need anything, give me or Li Qian a call. I promised your grandfather that I'd take care of you. Grandfather again. Xia Yunyun looked at Li Anping's back view with some disappointment. She only looked away when Li Anping boarded a car. After today's encounter, Xia Yunyun felt that not only had the gap between the two of them not been narrowed, but it had become even wider. Is it because of my strength? Xia Yunyun clenched her fist. It's the same with grandfather, Song Tian, and today's incident as well as my relationship with Li Anping. I'm too weak. I can't do anything. If I can be more powerful, even if I don't use my 5th energy level, or even my 4th energy level, even if my abilities are very weak, my psychokinesis would be stronger. My relationship with him might also be able to. When Xia Yunyun thought of this, a hint of redness appeared on her face. However, the fighting spirit in her eyes burned fiercely. Fang Xinjian had abilities that others looked up to, and he had also lent her a helping hand when she was at her most desperate moment. Unknowingly, Li Anping had already left an indelible shadow in Xia Yunyun's heart. In the 8th Research Institute, Basement 15, Li Anping and Shi stood behind a glass window. Inside the glass window was a laboratory. Zhou Kong was tied to the laboratory table by layers of restraints, and his consciousness had already sunk into a coma. A group of staff members wearing white coats were surrounding him. All sorts of blood drawing, ultrasound, X-rays, and other routine examinations were being carried out. Behind the glass window, Shi said excitedly, "This is too amazing. One person actually has 4 types of superpowers. This is really a perfect test subject. Through the cloning of this test subject, our success rate will be greatly increased. Perhaps each of his clones will only inherit 1 or 2 types of superpowers, but the probability of the clones being ability users will be greatly increased. If we can even figure out how he obtained 4 types of superpowers, maybe we can also produce powerful multiple ability users ourselves. All right, Doctor. Take it slow. The most important thing now is still the cloning matter." Li Anping interrupted Shi, who was immersed in his imagination, and brought the problem back to reality. Speed up the cloning process, especially this latest test subject. Since his cloned body's ability inheritance rate will be the highest, then use him to replace the previous Kirin Type 1 as the main production model. No problem. Shi agreed. On the other hand, Li Anping squinted his eyes and sized up one of the staff members in the laboratory. This person was obviously the leader of the laboratory, but he had brown hair and dark green eyes. Among the black-haired and yellow-skinned Great Xia people, he was particularly eye-catching. "How is he adapting?" Li Anping asked. "Haha, you mean Norman Osborn?" Shi laughed. "He's really a genius." After knowing the existence of ability users, he immediately devoted himself to work. He's even more fanatical than me on some of the subjects of ability users. Li Anping nodded and said nothing. After all, the time was still short. He had to wait at least a year or 2. After confirming that the other party had no problems, he would allow de Xia Dragonfinch to reduce the monitoring of Norman. And he heard from Scorpion that the other party had an awakened nephew who had been investigating his uncle's disappearance outside. However, with Li Anping's confidentiality of the 8th Research Institute, it was impossible to find out here without a very high power in de Xia, even if it was an ability user. Then Li Anping asked Shi about the recent situation of the 8th Research Institute. Shi expressed his satisfaction. Whether it was equipment, researchers, resources, or materials, it was sufficient with the support of de Xia Dragonfinch. Especially after Li Anping subdued the Zhang family, he let the Zhang family fully support the research of the 8th Research Institute. With the background of the other 9 great royal families, whether it was Li Anping or Shirwen, they were now completely too rich to spend. The only thing the 8th Research Institute needed now was time and more experimental materials. That night, Li Anping once again harvested a batch of newly completed Kirin Type 1 and walked out of the 8th Research Institute. During this period of accumulation, his physical fitness finally improved slightly again, reaching strength 16. 6, speed 15. 7, and physical fitness 17. 7. Getting into the car, Li Anping ordered the driver to drive to Xia Dragonfinch's base. He once again took out a newspaper and scanned through the data of the people being monitored. Li Anping's brain was like a supercomputer, filtering and summarizing the information of the entire Tianjing one by one. 20 minutes later, Li Anping's brain suddenly felt tired. He then remembered that he seemed to have not slept for a week. During this time, he had been monitoring, harvesting clones, managing the dragon sparrow guards, contacting the support of the Zhang family, one thing after another. After all, under the pressure of the League of Stars and the Ice Fortress, he dared not relax at all. But even with Li Anping's physique, it was impossible for him to not rest for such a long time. After thinking about it, Li Anping closed his eyes and planned to take a short nap while he was in the car. But with this sleep, Li Anping's entire body suddenly fell into the deepest level of sleep. Wisps of black psyche chi emerged from his back and surged into his brain. In a void of consciousness, Li Anping suddenly opened his eyes. Chapter 145. Li Anping opened his eyes. The cars and tall buildings around him had all disappeared. All he could see was a pure white land and a pure white sky. Everything was white. This is? Li Anping looked at the scene in front of him and slowly recalled, isn't this the dream that I often had when black first possessed me? Looking at the vast pure white land under his feet, Li Anping frowned. What's going on? Did I enter a dream again? However, Li Anping soon realized that something was wrong. He realized that he could not control his body in this dream. He was like a first-person spectator who could only watch the movements of this body. That's right, it was this body. From the first-person perspective, Li Anping could see the limbs of this body. They were clearly not his, nor were they human limbs. The soles of the feet were like horse hooves, and the arms were covered with black scales. The entire body was a faint black color. Li Anping could not control this black monster-like body. He could only watch this body walk on the ground. Different from the previous dream, Li Anping saw many creatures on the ground this time. Some of them looked like horses, but they had flame-like manes. There were charred marks on their hooves. Some of them looked like lions, but they had bat-like wings and scorpion tails. All the monsters here looked similar to those in the real world. However, each of them had their own differences, making them look like monsters. Along the way, Li Anping saw tens of thousands of such creatures on the ground. It was like a huge gathering of monsters. The only thing they had in common was that the surface of their bodies was more or less a faint black color. Li Anping watched this black body walk on the ground. No matter what kind of creatures it met, they would all show complete submission to this body. This body also showed an attitude of taking whatever it wanted from the monsters on the ground. Facing the monsters that were kneeling on the ground, he would sometimes ignore them. Sometimes he would reach out and pull out a piece of the monster's heart and eat it. Sometimes he would tear off a big piece of flesh and chew on it. However, even if he tore their companions into pieces right in front of them, none of the monsters dared to resist. This body was like the king of this land. All the creatures on the ground were his food, and he could harvest them as he wished. There's no way to affect this body. Is this really a dream? Or is this someone's memory? Li Anping thought of the creature that had been sleeping for a very long time. He was speechless. Therefore, he just watched and realized that the owner of this body seemed to be doing all his actions aimlessly. Black? Is that you? Is this your memory's memory? Li Anping shouted in his consciousness world. Suddenly, he felt his heart clench. The entire world had shattered, and there was no longer any white land or monsters. Li Anping was already in a stretch of starry sky. Under his feet, a blue planet was rotating slowly. Before Li Anping could react, he felt an intense summoning coming from the bottom of his feet. It was like the summoning of his own kind. Unable to hold back the waves of palpitation in his heart, Li Anping charged toward the planet under his feet with a single thought. After passing through the dissipation layer, stratosphere, and troposphere, a stretch of land that he could not see the end of appeared before Li Anping. Looking at the strange yet familiar appearance of the land, Li Anping mumbled, "This is the Western land?" At the next moment, Li Anping's descending speed increased once again. In the blink of an eye, he arrived above a small town. This small town was surrounded by mountains and rivers, and the scenery was beautiful. It was clear that it was a good place to cultivate one's nature and relax one's body. However, the current small town was completely different from how it usually was. There were surging flames and astonishing explosions everywhere. The streets were filled with frantic people with blonde hair and blue eyes. Behind the crowd was a group of strange people who were pitch black in color and moved with great agility. Not only were these strange people fast and powerful, but the most terrifying thing was that each time they caught up with a person, they would push that person to the ground and start biting them. They were eating people. The entire small town was like hell, and Li Anping was extremely shocked. He wanted to move his body to kill those people who were eating people. However, he realized that when he charged over, it was like a lump of air. He passed through the strange people's bodies easily, and he was unable to do anything to them. Meanwhile, there were fewer and fewer living people in the small town. Ordinary firearms and cold weapons were unable to stop the strange people's attacks at all. In the blink of an eye, there were only over 30 living people left in the small town. What was even more terrifying was that almost all the people who had been killed by the strange people stood up and turned into those strange people, continuing to chase after the humans. Right now, the remaining over 30 living people in the small town were gathered in a church. They had locked the church's doors, trying to fend off the thousands of strange people outside. However, it was obvious that even they themselves thought that this was impossible. Most of the people's eyes were filled with despair. Some of them knelt on the ground, praying to the heavens to save them. Just when Li Anping thought that these more than 30 people were dead for sure, two figures flew over from the sky. The one in front was a white-haired man. When he saw the thousands of strange people under his feet, he waved one hand. A shocking scene happened. The thousands of strange people all floated up into the sky. Each of them seemed to have lost gravity and floated up in space. Gravity control? No, only the strange people are flying up. Is it psychokinesis? That's not right either. These strange people are all moving. It doesn't seem like their movements have been sealed. Li Anping could not tell what ability the white-haired man had used. He only saw him clench his hand again. Then, the sea of strange people in the sky that covered the sky and the sun all gathered toward one point. The point in the sky was like a black hole, sucking in all the strange people. However, this black hole did not make the strange people disappear like a black hole. Instead, it sucked all the strange people together. Tens of thousands of monsters were sucked into a ball, forming a densely packed ball of people. It looked like a small planet formed by countless human bodies. It made one's scalp go numb. The white-haired man was undoubtedly a level 5 ability user to create such a miraculous scene. After doing all this, the white-haired man nodded to the person who flew over with him behind him, as if he had done something insignificant. The person who flew over with him was a young blonde woman. She had a delicate face and a slender figure. In terms of appearance, she was comparable to the top celebrities in the entertainment industry. However, what was more special about her was that she had an otherworldly aura. She was like the stars in the sky, making people feel that she was noble and elegant. Lianping had seen many beautiful women. However, no matter if it was Xia Yunyun, Li Qian, Xiao Xuesu, or Wei Shishir, who he had met earlier, they were all slightly inferior to the blonde woman in front of him. The blonde woman also nodded at the man. In the next moment, she pointed at the church below her feet, and all the citizens there fell asleep. Then, she pointed at the human planet in midair, and an invisible force swept across the thousands of strange people. The strange people who had been struggling on the planet all stopped moving and returned to normal. They were like corpses, not moving at all, their eyes staring straight ahead. Does this woman have some kind of mental control ability? It seems to be a level 5 ability user as well. Lianping stared at the blonde woman in midair. Who are they? Are they the top experts in the Western land? Just as Lianping could not help but observe the man and woman, the blonde woman suddenly turned her head. She frowned and glared at Lianping. What? She can see me? Just as Lianping was about to say something, the blonde woman's glare caused him to feel a heart-wrenching pain in his body. The world before his eyes shattered once again. Lianping, who was in the car, opened his eyes and spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, he opened his mouth and spat out a few more mouthfuls of blood. He felt as if his internal organs had been smashed into pieces. The driver stopped the car immediately and made a call anxiously. At the same time, he asked Lianping, "Sir, are you all right? I'll call the infirmary right now." "There's no need." Lianping waved his hand. His internal organs had already recovered under the effects of his ultra-rapid regeneration ability. However, he still remembered everything that had happened in the dream earlier very clearly. However, was everything that had happened earlier really a dream? The woman's attack on him had truly affected his body. Lianping could not wait to verify if this was a dream or not. Also, did that woman use a mental attack to hurt him? Lianping had encountered many ability users who could use mental attacks, but their abilities were all ineffective against him. Even someone as strong as Xia Laikong, who was a level 5 ability user, could not directly affect Lianping's brain with his illusion ability. Lianping felt that it was time to test how resistant he was to mental attacks. What Lianping did not know was that if it was not for the fact that his soul was not in his body, that blonde woman's mental attack would not have been able to hurt him at all. His body was already different from a human's. He was naturally immune to all mental attacks. On the other side, in the distant western continent, after the blonde woman repelled Lianping with a single attack, the white-haired man beside him said in surprise, "Alliance leader, I sensed your energy fluctuation. Is there a problem?" "Nothing, it's just a peeping ant. It should be dead by now." The blonde woman said arrogantly, "Bring these monsters back to base 25. I still need to go support Yulia." "Understood." The man bowed and replied. Then, with a wave of his right hand, he brought the human planet in the air and flew into the distance. Chapter 146. In the office, Lianping scanned through the computer screen. The screen was filled with scenes of towns in the west. He wanted to verify whether his dream was real or fake. Lianping guessed that it had something to do with the black psychic energy figure that kept appearing behind him. It seemed that as his strength increased, the figure appeared more frequently. Perhaps the dream this time was also influenced by the figure. He had already checked the White Land and various monsters. Other than a bunch of myths, he found nothing. Therefore, he set his sights on the small town he saw in his dream. With his superb memory, Lianping memorized all the scenes of the small town in his mind. Then, he searched the internet based on these scenes, trying to find this small town in reality. However, there were too many similar small towns in the western mainland. Lianping compared many images on the internet but still couldn't find it. After all, he also relied on the mouse to click on the images one by one. It was too slow. Just then, someone knocked on the door. Lianping said without raising his head, "Come in." Momo, who had dyed blonde hair, walked in timidly and said softly, "Sir, you're looking for me?" Lianping raised his head, looked at him, and asked, "Your ability is to control the computer through your consciousness, right?" "Yes." "Yes," Momo said cautiously. Lianping continued, "Then help me find a small town. I'll describe the scene there to you. You can help me find it through the internet and see where this small town is in the western mainland. Can you do this?" "It should be possible." Momo nodded as if he didn't fully understand. Then, he sat in Lianping's seat. Lianping stood at the side and began to describe the scene of the small town in his memory. Momo stretched out a finger toward the USB port of the computer. Then, a stream of blue psychic energy emerged from his finger and slowly connected to the port. The computer's mainframe suddenly rang, and countless windows popped up on the computer screen in an instant. Dazzling search pages kept popping up, and dozens of photos of various small towns in the western continent were displayed. Lianping was dazzled by them. This way, the search speed was much faster. 5 minutes later, the screen stopped at a picturesque picture of a small town. Momo asked, "Sir, is this the place?" Lianping looked carefully and shook his head. "It's not here." Hence, the computer screen started to refresh again. This time, it did not even jump out of the window. Instead, countless numbers of data kept popping up. With Lianping's ordinary computer skills, he could no longer understand what Momo was doing. In the next half an hour, Momo showed Lianping photos of more than 10 towns. However, Lianping denied all of them. Is it really a dream? Lianping thought, but if it was really a dream, why would my body be injured in reality? Could it be an ability user who can attack me in my dreams? But how did he know that I had a dream of a white land? Is it a coincidence? Just as Lianping was thinking, Momo opened another photo and asked, "Sir, is this the place?" Lianping stared at the photo and said coldly, "It's here." "What's the name of this place?" Let me take a look." A series of information popped up on the computer screen. Momo read, "This is a small town near the western coast of the Amist Federation. It's called Taiguz. It's a popular tourist town in the area." Lianping thought for a moment and said, "Check if there's any news about this town recently." Momo nodded. The computer screen started to flicker again. Rows of news about the town popped up. Lianping started to read according to the time. Werewolves suspected in Taiguz. Witnesses bitten. People in Taiguz attacked, all bitten. Taiguz Town's Central Hospital found a corpse stolen. Police are currently investigating. After a series of news, Lianping skipped to the most recent one. Mudslide in Taiguz. The only 2 main roads in the town were buried. Rescue work is currently underway. Mudslide? Normal people would not feel anything after reading the news, but Lianping connected it to the things in his dream and found something fishy. Lianping thought about the outbreak of cannibalism in the western continent. The first outbreak seemed to be near Taiguz. In that case, were the so-called cannibals the freaks he had seen? The rumor said that the conflict between the League of Stars and the Amist Federation's imaginary organization was because of how to deal with the cannibals. There were too many coincidences. Lianping started to feel that his dream was not real. Clearly, the monsters were the cause of the bites in Taiguz, and the mudslide was probably a lie made up by the government to seal off the town. The blonde woman and the white-haired man were the superhumans sent to clean up the monsters. Wait, that white-haired man. Halfway through his thoughts, Lianping suddenly said to Momo, "Show me the information of all the level 5 superhumans in the database." Momo heard that and pictures of more than 20 level 5 superhumans popped up on the computer. Lianping even saw pictures of Xia Likong, the Flying General, Zhu Rong, and Song Bang. Suddenly, Lianping's eyes narrowed. He pointed at a white-haired man and said, "Who's this man?" Momo opened the white-haired man's picture and showed a long list of information. Momo said, "He's Titan from the League of Stars. His ability is to control gravity. He's a level 1 superhuman. He's also a top level 5 superhuman. Basically, everyone in Xia Dragonfinch knows him." "Everyone knows him?" Lianping asked curiously. Momo nodded wordlessly. She pointed at the computer screen. A line of information about Titan was enlarged. After Lianping saw it, his expression froze. Momo said calmly, 10 years ago, it was him who led a group of level 4 superhumans to attack Xia Dragonfinch's headquarters. At the time, Zhu Rong hadn't become a level 5 superhuman yet. General Xia, Song General, Song Bang, and the Flying General fought with their lives on the line. The three of them paid the price of heavy injuries and only temporarily repelled Titan. Lianping understood. That white-haired man was Titan from the League of Stars. Then the blonde woman beside him was probably also from the League of Stars. If the second half of the dream is related to the first half, then the first half is most likely from Black. Lianping suddenly remembered the words Black said. "My own kind, my brothers and sisters. Our abilities are different but equally powerful. Humans as a race that far surpasses you all. After Kano is killed, they will also sense my existence. In order to delay the time they discover you, from now on, I will take the initiative to fall into a deep sleep. And you, do your best to hunt and become stronger. If you eat enough people, you might have a chance to escape when you meet them in the future." If the black psychic figure that appeared from time to time after reaching the third energy level really has something to do with the sleeping black, then it seems like as my strength increases again, this black figure will appear more and more frequently. Meanwhile, the dream this time might also have something to do with him. The white continent, the black monster, the first half of the dream was too similar to Black's memories or thoughts. The second half, however, seemed to have been inspired by his kind. It presented an out-of-body state, crossing the sea in an instant and arriving at the western continent. Black said that his kind would come looking for him. Did they come from the western continent? Lianping recalled the summoning he felt in the dream. Were they the companions that Black had mentioned? Were they the companions that were looking for him? To be able to summon him from so far away, these monsters' abilities were indeed beyond imagination. Lianping thought of those man-eating monsters and their abnormal bodies. He felt that even if these monsters were not Black's companions, they were probably created by his companions. And Titan and the blonde woman were obviously dealing with these things. Titan, as a level 5 ability user, was sent to do this kind of thing. It showed that the League of Stars valued these monsters. Lianping knew his own ability too well, and because of that, he was very afraid of Black's so-called companions. Fortunately, the western continent was the territory of other countries, and also the main area of influence of the League of Stars. This also made Lianping think of why there was no news from the League of Stars after he extinguished Broman's arrogance. Was it because of Black's companions, and because of the conflict between the man-eating disease and the imaginary mechanism, that the League of Stars was temporarily unable to free up manpower in the western continent? Lianping guessed. However, these things were just Lianping's guesses, and there was not enough evidence. Regardless of whether the League of Stars was temporarily unable to free up manpower, he needed to hurry. Originally, I only wanted to catch the unspecialized, but it seems that those organized can't be let go so easily, Lianping thought. And my body's resistance to mental attacks also needs to be tested. I've always been immune to mental attacks. Why could that woman hurt me? This needs to be studied carefully. I need more time to monitor the situation. Thinking of this, Lianping looked at Momo and said, "Momo, your ability is very useful, I need it very much. Go find Li Qian later, I want you to help me set up an intelligence network." Me? Momo pointed at himself and hurriedly said, "Really, me? You just need to obey. With your ability you can do it." Lianping patted him on the shoulder and said, "Let's go, find Li Qian and come together." Chapter 147. Lianping looked at Li Qian and Momo in front of him. After some deliberation, he asked, "Momo, I want to develop a computer system. I want you to scan words from paper into the database every day, and then let you analyze these words." Momo nodded and said, "It can be done. I can control the camera and use my thinking as a human to make judgments. However, how much data will be collected every day?" "Probably 1 to 2 gigabytes per day." Momo smiled relaxedly. "That's too easy. Just Tianjing's surveillance cameras alone have a capacity that is over 10 times that of this." "That's good. These words describe all kinds of information. After entering this information into the database and analyzing it, this is only the first step." Lianping said to Li Qian and Momo, "Other than this, there's also Xia Dragonfinch, the Secret Service, the Military Intelligence Department, newspapers, magazines, and those things on the internet. I hope to be able to enter as much information as possible into this database. I hope to be able to monitor the entire situation in Xia through it." Momo frowned and said, "As long as Sir can help me get the authority, I'll have no problem collecting the existing data. However, there are many places that don't have ready-made information in the form of electronic data. Moreover, with so much data, it's not just a problem with the software." Lianping understood what Momo meant. All kinds of information about Xia were scattered among the various departments of Xia: population, household registration, accounts, files, various surveillance cameras, and all kinds of information were scattered in various departments and places. Collecting all of this information wasn't something that Momo could do alone. "It seems that this matter can't be rushed." Lianping sighed and said, "Then first enter the data that I only asked you to enter." Lianping handed the newspaper to Momo and told him, "This newspaper is my second ability. There will be new information on it every day. What you need to do is to enter it in real time. If you need any equipment, just send an email to me." Momo looked at the newspaper in astonishment. After skimming through a few pages, the expression on his face kept changing. Cold sweat instantly covered the back of his head. Lianping actually told him such an important thing. He instantly felt worried about his future freedom. "As for the other information, I will talk to the Secret Service first and access their database first." Lianping thought for a moment and said, "Let's just use these 2 data sources for now. However, regarding the issue of intelligence analysis, I will let Lu Feng help you. You don't need to tell him where the intelligence came from. They just wanted him and his team to specify the method of analyzing the intelligence, the classification of the intelligence, and the structure of the entire intelligence data. Analyze them based on these and rank them according to their importance every day. Send me a list. No, let's make a simple web page. Other than ranking the important new posts, I can also search vaguely based on my own goals." "Yes." Momo nodded seriously. Now that Lianping had given him such a task, it was hard for him to back down. In the end, Lianping patted Momo's shoulder and said, "You're a smart person, but sometimes smart people are more likely to make mistakes. I'll say it again. My second ability is to monitor many people every day. However, from now on, help me record them all into the database. I only need to monitor you every day. Don't you think so?" How could Momo not understand such a blatant threat? He swallowed his saliva and said, "Yes." However, Lianping didn't threaten him blindly. He smiled faintly and said, "Work hard. From today on, your position will be promoted by 3 levels. Your benefits will be the same as those of a general. In the future, if you can develop a highly intelligent program to replace you, you won't have to work so hard every day. Don't worry, I definitely won't treat you badly. Momo immediately expressed his loyalty. Lianping patted his shoulder again and let him go. Lianping looked at Li Qian, who was expressionless, and asked, "What's wrong? Am I very useless?" Li Qian said with tears in her eyes. "How could that be?" Lianping forced a warm smile and suddenly hugged Li Qian. "From Jadeite City until now, you've been following me. Your ability is too important to me." Really? Li Qian looked at Lianping in surprise. When she realized that she was being hugged by Lianping, her face couldn't help but blush. Although Lianping's expression was somewhat unnatural, Li Qian, who was pleasantly surprised, didn't notice Lianping's unnatural expression at all. "Yes, even in Xia Dragonfinch now, the only person I can truly trust is you." Lianping looked straight at Li Qian. "Yes." Li Qian blushed and nodded. She felt that her heart was beating very fast. Lianping watched as Li Qian happily skipped out of the office. The expression on his face instantly became cold. He suddenly said, "Roland, why are you still here?" My lord." A young woman with a graceful figure and purple hair suddenly appeared in the air. She looked at Lianping with a panicked expression and said, Li Qian has already left. Why aren't you chasing after her?" Lianping looked at Roland coldly and said, "Don't forget to report to me every day about Li Qian." Yes, my lord." Roland nodded and disappeared into the air again. Because the source of Li Qian's surveillance ability, and it just so happened that she couldn't monitor herself with her ability, Lianping arranged for Roland, a stealth ability user, to follow her around and protect her as well as monitor her. Just now, Lianping also lied. Even though Momo had recorded all the data from the newspaper into the database, Lianping still had to personally monitor a few people through the newspaper every day. Roland and Momo were one of them. Sitting back in his seat, Lianping picked up a document with a few lines of words on it. One of the lines was, "Li Qian's Emotional Assessment Report." It was an analysis of Li Qian's daily behavior and emotional situation by a dozen psychologists. The conclusion was that Li Qian had an unusual dependence and affection for Lianping. It was suggested that Lianping could deepen this relationship through appropriate means. Lianping glanced at the document and put it into the shredder. "Sorry, Li Qian, but in order to obtain the strongest power, in order to build the world I want, I need a perfect intelligence network, one that can even cover the entire planet one day and let me know everything that happens in this society." He thought of the Ice Fortress, the League of Stars, the White Land in his dream, the terrifying monster, and the last two level 5 ability users, a man and a woman. Lianping's sense of urgency grew heavier and heavier. A few days later, on the 21st underground floor of the 8th Research Institute, which was also the lowest floor, a giant metal pillar more than 3 meters thick stood in the middle of the room. The giant pillar extended all the way to the outside of the room through a hole in the ceiling of the room. Although it was impossible to tell how thick the entire metal pillar was, just the visible part of the room alone was already more than 20 meters long. And right below the metal pillar, Lianping raised the metal pillar with his right hand. He was wearing an earpiece from which a voice sounded, "Sir, do you still want to increase the strength? How much is it now?" Lianping asked. "It's already 200 tons. Lianping lightly pushed his palm. That metal pillar extending from the ceiling of the room was like a toy, immediately pushed several centimeters higher. He calmly said, "Add another 100 tons. A cry of surprise sounded from the other side of the earpiece. Yes, sir." With a boom sound, Lianping felt a wave of astonishing power transmitted from the metal pillar. His body sank slightly, his arm unconsciously bending a bit. The metal pillar that had just been raised a few centimeters immediately dropped by around 10 centimeters. However, Lianping released a light shout, and with a forceful push, the entire metal pillar was pushed back to its original position. Using only one hand to lift such a heavy object, Li Anping felt like he was still far from reaching his limit. He secretly sighed to himself that he had made the right choice in getting someone to build this room. Now that he wanted to train a little, it was not something that could be satisfied with ordinary equipment. Just as Li Anping was about to increase the weight, a voice sounded from the earpiece again. "Sir, Mr. Wei said that the guests you invited have arrived. They are waiting for you in reception room 21. Oh, tell them that I'll be right there." After saying that, Li Anping exhaled. Then, with a forceful push with his right hand, the entire metal pillar flew up into the air, and he left in an instant. Following that, the metal pillar fell from mid-air with a loud boom. The ground where it fell had caved in completely. In the reception room, 3 young people were waiting anxiously. Suddenly, a loud boom came from beneath their feet, giving them a fright. What's wrong? Did it explode? Could it be that someone is fighting their way in? The people from the League of Stars are fighting their way in? Just as the 3 of them were panicking, Li Anping pushed open the door to the reception room and walked in. Seeing the 3 of them, he smiled faintly and said, "Sorry, I was just training a little. Did I scare you guys?" Chapter 148. When the 3 of them saw Li Anping enter, they immediately stood up and saluted. "Sir." Li Anping sized up the 3 of them and suddenly stopped his gaze on one of the women. He frowned and said, "Why are you here?" Xiao Xuesu, who had a foxy expression, said, "Why can't I be here? Aren't you looking for ability users who are good at mental attacks? Among the 9 royal clans, other than the Zhang clan, our Xiao clan has the strongest mental abilities." Xiao Xuesu still looked as seductive as ever. Her long, straight legs were wrapped in a pair of black pantyhose. Her skirt and small military uniform were wrapped tightly around her, causing every word she said to be filled with seductive power. When the other 2 men from the Zhang clan heard her, they could not help but look at her from the corner of their eyes. Li Anping thought for a moment and asked, "What are your abilities?" Xiao Xuesu answered first, "My ability is to stimulate desire. Appetite, desire for knowledge, greed, and all kinds of desires." After saying that, she licked her lips and said, "Of course, there's also lust." The other man looked at Xiao Xuesu and swallowed his saliva. He continued, "We are all ability users from the Zhang clan. Our ability is to forget. We can erase our opponent's memories by touching them." Li Anping nodded. Ever since he planned to test his body's resistance to mental attacks, the 3 people in front of him were already the 4th wave. In the beginning, they were just level 1 ability users with very low ability sequences. Then, there were level 2 and level 3 ability users. Without exception, all of their mental attacks were ineffective against Li Anping. Therefore, Li Anping contacted Lu Xing and asked him to find some powerful ability users who were good at mental attack. Therefore, Lu Xing contacted Zhang Yanheng. However, for some reason, Xiao Xuesu also sneaked in. Li Anping pointed at the 2 ability users from the Zhang clan and said, "Attack me together." "What? Sir, we don't dare." "Don't be nervous. Use your full strength." Li Anping waved his hand and said, "No matter what happens, I won't hold you accountable." The 2 of them looked at each other and nodded. "Then, sir, let's begin." Li Anping nodded. He turned his back to them and said, "Come on, don't be nervous. Use your full strength." The 2 of them walked up, one on each side, and put their hands on Li Anping's shoulders. 2 streams of average psychic force rose from their bodies. They were about to reach the 4th level. However, as their expressions grew more and more serious, Li Anping still did not sense any attacks. 10 minutes later, the 2 men's faces were flushed red, and they were sweating profusely. In the end, they still put down their hands dejectedly. Li Anping frowned. "Did you use your full strength?" "Yes." One of them looked at Li Anping in disbelief and said, "Sir, your spiritual world gives me the feeling that it's as vast as the starry sky. Our attacks can't do anything to you at all." Lianping turned his head to Xiao Xuesu and said, "You do it." Xiao Xuesu smiled and walked over. She stood in front of Lianping and deliberately bent down. "Sir, do you want me to touch you there?" Lianping frowned and stretched out his right hand. "If you touch my hand, you should be able to activate your ability, right?" "Yes." Xiao Xuesu stretched out her hands and grabbed Lianping's hand. Her hands looked tender and white. She grabbed Lianping's big hand and kept rubbing it, making Lianping feel a little itchy in his heart. "Be serious," Lianping could not help but say. Xiao Xuesu looked innocent. "Although our family's ability is to stir up lust, everyone is good at different things. I'm good at stirring up lust." That innocent and pure look made her look like a high school girl who was bullied by a strange uncle. It made people want to swallow her whole. This vixen. The two men from the Zhang family swallowed their saliva and cursed in their hearts. Next, Xiao Xuesu twisted her body and touched Lianping's hand non-stop. However, even after 10 minutes, Lianping still did not show any reaction. Seeing Lianping's expressionless face, Xiao Xuesu made up her mind. She suddenly bent down and opened her mouth to bite Lianping's finger. "What are you doing?" Lianping frowned and looked at Xiao Xuesu. He pulled his finger away from Xiao Xuesu's mouth. During the process of pulling his finger away, Lianping felt something slippery and soft slide across his finger. When he pulled his finger away from Xiao Xuesu's mouth, there was a sparkling thread hanging from the corner of Xiao Xuesu's mouth. Xiao Xuesu's face was flushed as she said softly, "Sir." She bit her lips. "Do you feel anything?" "Enough." Lianping pushed Xiao Xuesu away. "All of you can leave." Ignoring Xiao Xuesu's resentful expression, Lianping turned around and did not look at her anymore. After the three of them left, he let out a deep breath. Xiao Xuesu's actions earlier had indeed affected him. However, it was not because of his ability, but because of his body's natural reaction. In that case, mental attacks are indeed useless against me? Lianping thought of this and recalled that Xia Likong had said something similar when they first met. Xia Likong was a level 5 ability user. However, if mental attacks were really useless against Lianping, why was the blonde lady in the western continent able to injure his body across the sea? Lianping thought that it might be related to his body's condition at that time. At that time, he did not have his own physical body and was in a state similar to a spirit body. Lianping suspected that it was because his body did not have the protection of a physical body, which was why he was injured by the blonde lady. Thinking of this, Lianping's eyes shone with a cold light. The image of the goddess-like blonde lady appeared in his mind again. "The next time I see you, I will not let you off so easily." A few days later, Lianping sat in his office. There was a special web page on his computer. Momo's computer skills were indeed very good. In a short period of time, he had already built a trial version of the website. Lianping was using the web page to browse all kinds of information. At the same time, he recorded some flaws and mistakes and prepared to send them to Momo for further debugging. What he was browsing was information on some of the ability user organizations in the Great Xia. This included the True God Religion, One Breath Sect, Revival Society, and other organizations. Originally, he had asked the Dragon Sparrow Guards to capture individual ability users in order to avoid a fierce confrontation between the ability user organizations in the country. However, Lianping felt that the progress of cloning was too slow. He had captured many individual ability users, but their ability levels were generally not high. There were even fewer special ability users like Shou Kong, so their effect on him was limited. Now, Lianping's physical fitness had improved a little. His strength was 16.6, his speed was 15.8, and his physical fitness was 17.7. However, he still felt that it was too slow. Therefore, he still set his sights on the ability user organizations. These organizations were integrated with the local forces and were deeply rooted in various places. If Li Anping was not in a hurry to increase his strength, he did not want to make a move. Coincidentally, during this period of time, in the face of the Dragon Sparrow Guard's large-scale mobilization, these organizations also made a move. They seemed to be taking in individual ability users and expanding their influence. Some of the more arrogant ones even thought that Xia Dragonfinch could no longer hold on without Xia Likong and Song Bang. There were also some who were not satisfied with the management of Xia Dragonfinch and wanted to take over. Most of them were second-rate organizations. In the process of the Dragon Sparrow Guards wantonly capturing individual ability users, they had taken in many panicked and desperate individuals. They felt that their strength had increased a lot during this period of time and wanted to challenge Xia Dragonfinch's authority. There were also organizations like the Revival Society and One Breath Sect who were unhappy with Li Anping for killing their people. They secretly added fuel to the fire and wanted to test Xia Dragonfinch, who was currently led by Li Anping. Li Anping's eyes scanned through the messages and finally stopped on one of them. Oh? A gathering of individual ability users? Li Anping smiled. Interesting. They want to join forces? Chapter 149. Just as Li Anping was browsing through the information in the office, he suddenly tilted his head and his ears twitched slightly. Li Anping frowned. Then, with a swoosh, he disappeared, leaving behind countless documents that were blown away by a gust of wind. 2 kilometers away, in a convenience store, a middle-aged man with a full beard was holding a young woman hostage. He stood behind the woman, holding a fruit knife in his hand and pressing it against the woman's neck. He shouted loudly, "Go away, all of you! Don't come near me!" In front of the man, a convenience store clerk shouted, "Put her down first. Let's talk things out. We won't arrest you. Just take the money." Beside him, a customer also advised, "Calm down. Don't do anything stupid." However, the middle-aged man who was caught stealing in the convenience store was too nervous. He didn't notice that as long as he escaped, the people around him wouldn't stop him. He just pressed the knife against the woman in front of him and said anxiously, "Get out of my way. Get out of my way or I'll stab her to death." At this moment, a policeman walked in from the convenience store. He gestured for the people around him to leave. Then, he raised his hands to show that he had no weapons. "Don't worry. I didn't bring anything. Let's talk." When the middle-aged man saw the policeman come in, he became even more nervous. He shouted, "Don't arrest me. Get all the policemen away or I'll really stab her to death." The middle-aged man, who was agitated, exerted more force in his hand. The tip of the knife pierced the woman's skin and blood flowed out. "Ah!" The woman screamed and instinctively began to struggle. "No!" the policeman shouted. However, the woman's scream intensified the middle-aged man's nervousness and agitation. In the struggle, the knife was about to cut the woman's throat. At this critical moment, a gust of wind blew open the convenience store's door and swept through everyone in the store. After a moment of chaos, everyone rushed out of the door again. The policeman opened his eyes that were previously unable to open because of the gust of wind. He saw the woman standing there unharmed while the middle-aged man who stole was lying on the ground, crying out in pain. His legs were twisted at an unnatural angle, as if someone had broken them. On the street 1 kilometer away, Li Anping casually threw the blood-stained fruit knife into the dustbin. What he had done in the convenience store was nothing to him. As his physical fitness grew stronger, his ears could hear more and more things. At first, he was not used to hearing too many phone calls, voices, and all sorts of other noises. But now, he was gradually able to control himself and not pay attention to the voices that he didn't want to hear. Due to the increase in his hearing, he often heard things like robberies, murders, fires, and car accidents. Therefore, he would help them out. This directly caused the crime rate in Tianjin to drop. There were also some rumors about him circulating among the people. However, other than Xia Dragonfinch's people, no one knew that this was Li Anping's doing. Li Anping himself just happened to be there at the right time. He would help when he encountered it, but he would not take the initiative to find these things to do. After throwing away the fruit knife, Li Anping took out his mobile phone and made a call. "Hello, is this Lu Xing?" "It's me, sir," Lu Xing replied. "What's the matter, sir?" There's something I need to send a few people to do," Li Anping said calmly. "Tang Weihan, Yen Bei, Audrey, and Zhuo Mai at the base?" "Tang Weihan, Yen Bei was grounded by you last time. He hasn't come out yet. Zhuo Mai was released by you 3 days ago to carry out a mission. Audrey is still training." That's right. Tell Yen Bei to come out as well. Add Audrey, Yang Guang, and Sun Hao. I want them to carry out a mission." Li Anping thought for a moment. "Tell them to come to my office in the afternoon. I'll talk to them personally. As for Tang Weihan, it's a waste to use his ability purely for combat. Tell Lu Feng to train him." 3 days later, at the train station in Hongshan Town, south of Xia, a train had just arrived at the station when 4 men and women with different appearances got off. Their unique auras quickly attracted the attention of the people on the platform. Soon, a few men hurriedly went to report. Similar situations had happened too many times in the past 2 weeks. This was because a metahuman gathering was going to be held this weekend. It was estimated that over 300 metahumans would arrive at Hongshan Town. Right now, in a villa on the outskirts of Hongshan Town, there were more than 10 people gathered together to discuss the arrangements for this gathering. Sitting at the head of the table was a one-eyed old man. He was the only metahuman family in Hongshan Town, the head of the Yu family, Yushan. He was also the head of the strongest metahuman organization around Hongshan Town, the 5 Lakes Alliance. Recently, because Xia Dragonfinch had been wantonly capturing metahumans, the various metahuman organizations had taken the opportunity to recruit many members. The 5 Lakes Alliance was the same. The number of level 3 metahumans in their organization had increased by more than 10. Because of this, their strength had increased greatly. In addition, Hongshan Town was located in the south of Xia. The government's strength was much weaker than the north. Recently, the Yu family had even gotten into a conflict with the local government. For the time being, no one could control them. This had increased the arrogance of the Yu family and the 5 Lakes Alliance. Therefore, the 5 Lakes Alliance's head, Yushan, felt that his strength had increased greatly. In order to recruit more metahumans to join him, he secretly held this gathering. He claimed that he wanted to unite all metahumans to resist Xia Dragonfinch and the great demon Li Anping's oppression. Yushan smiled and said to the 10 metahumans on the ground, "Today, this old man would like to first thank everyone for participating in this grand event. Ever since Xia Dragonfinch was taken over by the great demon Li Anping, those sparrow guards have been tyrannical everywhere. They have indiscriminately killed and captured many metahuman brothers. Our gathering this time is to gather all of our metahuman brothers and fight against them together." Old man is right. A big man with a fierce face stood up. "These damned birds and that Li Anping, I don't know what's wrong with them. They chased me for more than 1,000 kilometers. If it wasn't for you, old man, saving me, I would have been sent to Tianjin to be executed. In short, wherever you point, I, Tu Xiong, will follow you." The whole scene was stirred up. The metahumans below were all recently joined the Yu family. At this moment, they all stood up to show their loyalty to Yushan, patting their chests. Yushan nodded his head in satisfaction. At this time, he had purposely communicated with the metahumans under him before the gathering started. This was to prevent any mistakes from happening. According to the statistics of his subordinates, the number of metahumans who had come to Hongshan Town was still increasing. Thinking about the hundreds of metahumans, if any mistakes were to happen during the meeting, Even if Yushan was a level 4 metahuman, he might not be able to suppress them. Therefore, he needed the metahumans under him to build bridges for him. They would be his chess pieces to encourage the other metahumans. At that time, if the Yu family could recruit another 50, or even 100 metahumans, how great would their power be? Not to mention Hongshan Town, even in the entire south, the Yu family would become the strongest metahuman family. Even Yushan felt that if he had so many metahumans under him, perhaps even the 9 great royal families wouldn't be able to compare to him. His confidence swelled like never before. This was very normal. Before seeing a level 5 metahuman, before seeing the hopeless difference in strength, all metahumans were very confident in themselves. This was especially true for metahumans like Yushan, who had been holed up in the mountains and hadn't seen the world. He looked at the 20 metahumans under him. His intentions are useful. Yushan and the middle-aged man beside him looked at each other and nodded their heads in satisfaction. This was the envoy sent by the One Qi sect. His name was Huang Xia. This time, it was because he had received the One Qi sect's support that Yushan dared to openly oppose the Xia Dragonfinch. After all, the One Qi sect was the country's top metahuman organization, and the Xia Dragonfinch didn't have any level 5 metahumans. Poor Yushan, this kind of local second-rate metahuman organization, didn't know that Li Anping had defeated Song Bang and Lei Di. The Xia Dragonfinch had done a good job of keeping this a secret. Seeing the complacent Yushan, Huang Xia sneered in his heart. If it wasn't to test the Xia Dragonfinch, why would he come to this kind of rundown place to help a country bumpkin like Yushan? They were really scared by Li Anping's battle record, but Li Anping clearly wasn't a level 5 metahuman. This kind of battle record and strength seriously didn't match up, making the One Qi sect's higher-ups a bit confused. However, Zui Buxiu really did die at Li Anping's hands. Therefore, in order to test the Xia Dragonfinch, and even test Li Anping's strength, Huang Xia was sent to instigate Yushan to organize this gathering. He wanted to see if the Xia Dragonfinch's attack range was limited to unspecialized metahumans, and what kind of attitude he had towards metahuman organizations that recruited unspecialized metahumans. Of course, what he said to Yushan was that he was using this gathering to gather popularity, and that he wouldn't actually fight the Xia Dragonfinch. The reason why he wanted Yushan to do this was because the One Qi sect's big tree attracted the wind. Using the 5 Lakes Alliance to find people, and then later on using the 5 Lakes Alliance as an outside organization of the One Qi sect. This wasn't a lie, after all. If the Xia Dragonfinch didn't interfere, the One Qi sect really did plan to do this. For Yushan, who had long wanted to take the next step, and always felt that Hongshan was too small, especially with the recent expansion of his power and ambition, this was a perfect fit. Chapter 150. A few days later, it was finally the day of the gathering. In a valley near Hongshan Town, there were a lot more people coming and going. Wearing a mask, Huang Linjun walked among the crowd and looked around. Ever since he found out that Li Anping had become the Xia Dragonfinch's highest-ranking officer, the anger in his heart burned more and more fiercely every day. This kind of scum who messes with the government, harms the loyal, subverts society, goes against humanity, the country, and the people. They actually let this kind of person lead the Xia Dragonfinch, lead us. Every time he thought of this, Huang Linjun wanted to kill Li Anping with his own hands. Unfortunately, as a subordinate of the Xia Dragonfinch, even though he was not in Tianjing, he knew that Li Anping was no longer the same as before. He was no longer someone he could deal with. Because of this, he regretted letting Li Anping go in Zhongdu. He had raised such a big threat. Therefore, when he heard about the gathering this time, he rushed over as soon as possible. Unfortunately, so far, the people he saw were all second and third level small fries. These people might be strong against normal people, but against the Xia Dragonfinch, They were nothing. At this moment, he was suddenly bumped into by a young man. Huang Linjun felt as if he had bumped into a mountain. With a thud, he fell to the ground. "Uncle, are you okay?" The young man looked at Huang Linjun embarrassedly and reached out his hand to help him up. Huang Linjun took the young man's hand and stood up. He stared at the young man's face. He thought to himself, according to his psychokinesis, he's only 3rd level, but his physical fitness is quite high. After all, I've been training for a long time. Even though it's not a mutated physical ability, I shouldn't have been knocked down by him. He opened his mouth and said, "Kid, you're here for the gathering too?" The young man smiled and said, "Yes, I am. You know Li Anping and Xia Dragonfinch?" Huang Linjun looked at the young man and asked. Because the young man looked like a high school student, he asked this question. "Yes." The young man nodded seriously, his eyes filled with disgust. "I've heard a lot of rumors about them recently. What an annoying evil organization. I want to bring down Li Anping and his Xia Dragonfinch. This is to uphold justice. This is also the significance of the ability that God gave me. Righteous." Huang Linjun's eyes were a little absent-minded, but he immediately reacted. He looked deeply at the youth and left without saying anything. On the other hand, the young man continued to follow closely behind Huang Linjun, laughing as he said, "Uncle, are you very familiar with the circle of ability users? This time, I lied to my mother that there was a makeup class at school, so I escaped." He hadn't come into contact with any superhumans before. "Can you tell me about it?" He did not care whether Huang Linjun was paying attention to him or not, and introduced himself to Huang Linjun. It turned out that he was from Qilin City and was a high school sophomore. He awakened his superpower when he was in middle school. After that, he researched superpowers on his own. In Qilin City, he did some chivalrous things like saving people and disaster relief. He even gave himself a nickname, Jin Guang. Because he had recently gotten to know a few lone espers and knew about this gathering, he hurried over. He wanted to contribute to the elimination of the great demon, Li Anping. Naive kid, Huang Linjun thought, but he was happy that Li Anping's reputation was so bad now. "So what if you're powerful? Now, all the ability users in the country know that you're a great demon. They'll gang up on you. Let's see how long you can last." Huang Linjun thought of this, and could not help but smile. "Uncle, what are you smiling about?" The young man, Jin Guang, did not wait for Huang Linjun's answer. He suddenly turned his head and said, "Uncle, look, it's starting." A few dozen meters away, everyone in the valley gathered in front of a high platform. A one-eyed old man slowly walked up. Seeing this, Huang Linjun and Jin Guang hurried up. There were more than 300 people gathered below the platform. Most of them were ability users, and a small number of them were ordinary people who came with the ability users. Yushan looked at the crowd below and coughed. He picked up the microphone and said, "Everyone, we're all ability users, so I'll get straight to the point. Recently, Xia Dragonfinch has been ruthless. He's been capturing isolated ability users, restricting their freedom, and even executing them in private. This kind of behavior is really infuriating. As the leader of the Five Lakes Alliance, although I've done my best, I've only saved 21 of my brothers." Speaking of this, someone below the platform shouted, "Elder Yu, you're too humble. If you hadn't taken us in, we would have been dead." "Yeah, those bastards from Bird's Club chased me for more than 1,000 kilometers. If you hadn't taken care of me, I might have been dragged to Tianjing and shot." Under the lead of a few people, the surrounding ability users were suddenly filled with disgust for Xia Dragonfinch and admiration for Yushan. Some of the people who remained calm were watching from the sidelines. Jin Guang said excitedly to Huang Linjun, "Uncle, look, Xia Dragonfinch has angered everyone. With so many of us, we can definitely defeat them." Huang Linjun humphed coldly and didn't say anything, but he sneered at Jin Guang's words in his heart. In his eyes, the ability users around him were just a bunch of mobs. Not to mention Lianping, even if the Dragon Sparrow Guards sent a few level 4 ability users, they would be able to wipe them out. They weren't soldiers at all. They were just ordinary people with superpowers. Whether it was their mentality, skills, or knowledge, they were just ordinary people. Yushan didn't stop talking on the platform. He was a good talker, and he was an expert at making the atmosphere more lively. In addition, there were more than 20 ability users under him who kept talking, so the atmosphere became more and more lively. Yushan even suggested that the Five Lakes Alliance should take the lead and establish a Hongshan Alliance. Everyone present should unite together and resist Xia Dragonfinch's oppression, taking in all the unaffiliated people who were being hunted down. Some people agreed, some expressed that they would consider it, and some people already had thoughts of leaving. Jin Guang asked Huang Linjun, "Uncle, are you going to participate? I also want to participate in the Hongshan Alliance, but I still have to study. What should I do?" Huang Linjun said disdainfully, "Idiot, what's the point of participating in this kind of thing?" A large man on the side heard what Huang Linjun said to Jin Guang and immediately glared at him. "Old man, how can you say that?" Huang Linjun couldn't be bothered with him. Jin Guang looked at the impassioned Yushan on the platform and was so excited that his face turned red. He couldn't wait to join the Hongshan Alliance and start a war with the evil Xia Dragonfinch. Someone shouted excitedly, "Brothers, we have so many people. Do you think we're afraid of some bird?" "Yes, as long as we work together, Xia Dragonfinch won't be able to do anything to us. And that Lianping, I heard that he's only a level 3 ability user. If it wasn't for Xia Dragonfinch, he wouldn't even be worth a fart." For a moment, the people below the stage only felt that there were so many ability users working together. Hongshan Alliance. Someone took the lead and shouted, "Hongshan Alliance." Huang Linjun sighed in his heart, "A bunch of idiots." Just as the crowd was in a frenzy, a large man who didn't want to join the Hongshan Alliance and left suddenly flew in from the exit and landed in the crowd with a thud, knocking down a group of people. Then, the ability users who had just left quietly flew in one after another. Like dumplings, they all fell into the crowd and smashed into the crowd. "How dare you?" Yushan shouted. "Who dares to cause trouble in my Five Lakes Alliance?" Five Lakes Alliance? Never heard of it. Is it that amazing? Sun Hao walked over from afar, his metal arm emitting a silver glow. Behind him was Yang Guang, Yen Bei, and Audrey. The group of people looked at the angry crowd with disdain. Yen Bei felt that Sun Hao had stolen the limelight and shouted first, "Trash, you want to fight against Xia Dragonfinch?" Yang Guang also stood out and shouted, "Xia Dragonfinch, clear the area. All normal people, quickly retreat. Ability users who surrender will not be killed." Audrey didn't say a word. She was covered from head to toe in a cloak, so no one could see what she looked like. "Xia Dragonfinch? They're the Dragon Sparrow Guards? What do we do? Let's fight it out with them." The crowd that was still in a frenzy immediately panicked. Yushan shouted and calmed everyone down. "Everyone, calm down. There are only 4 of them. Can't we deal with 4 of them?" Chapter 151. Saying something like that already shows how ignorant and weak you are. Sun Hao laughed. Lightning flashed all over his body, and he rushed into the crowd. It was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep. Everywhere it passed, bones and tendons were broken, and miserable screams were heard. Just in terms of strength, speed, and fighting skills, Sun Hao was already above these hundreds of people. Most of these people could not even break Sun Hao's psychic force. Yen Bei, who was standing at the side, laughed maniacally and rushed out as well. He raised his hand and shouted, "Go to hell, you trash!" A huge collapsing force field appeared in his hand, and he was about to shoot it out in the next second. With the power of the collapsing force field, it was enough to kill the hundreds of people in front of him. At this moment, a diamond arm grabbed Yan Bei's wrist tightly. "Do you want to kill everyone here?" Yang Guang shouted. "Did you forget the master's order? Capture them all alive and bring them to Tianjing." "Tisk!" Yan Bei snorted. "So troublesome." However, thinking about Li Anping's order, he still put away the collapsing force field and rushed in with his psychic force. However, Yan Bei was a level 4 metahuman. Even if he did not use his power, he could still crush these small fries. On the other side, Yang Guang saw that Yan Bei put away his power and did not stop him. He turned to Audrey and said, "Aren't you going to do anything?" Audrey's body was covered in a cloak and she did not say anything. Yang Guang knew that she was just that quiet, so he did not say anything. He shouted. Starting from his arms, other than his metal arms and legs, his entire body turned into stone. Then, he stepped out and rushed into the crowd. When he charged in, his destructive power was much greater than Sun Hao's. With his sturdy body and powerful strength, there was nothing he couldn't destroy after a direct collision. In less than a minute, Sun Hao, Yan Bei, and Yang Guang had already killed hundreds of people in front of them. On the stage, Yushan was at a loss as to what to do. He never thought that the huge force that he thought was united would be so weak in front of Sun Hao's group of 4. As level 4 ability users, Sun Hao and the other two's combat power far exceeded his. Originally, he thought that he could rely on these hundreds of low-level ability users to completely crush Sun Hao and the other 3. Who would have thought that the situation would be completely reversed? He asked Huang Xia with a panicked expression, "Sir? What to do? Should we retreat first?" "Trash!" Huang Xia sneered in his heart. However, looking at the panicked Yushan, he maintained a smile on his face and said, "Elder Yu, don't worry. This is just the beginning. There are so many people below the stage. Although most of them are not powerful, there are still a few fierce characters who have yet to make their moves. And your 5 Lakes Alliance hasn't gone up yet, right?" As if he was frightened by Huang Xia's calmness, Yushan forced himself to calm down. He ordered his subordinates, "Get Yu Lu and Yu Ping to come over." Below the stage, after a series of sprints, Sun Hao's group finally met a decent opponent. One of the dwarves found Sun Hao, and with a raise of his hand, a gust of cold air rushed towards him. Someone shouted, "It's Little Short Star. This guy is here too. I heard that this guy's cold air can even freeze flames." "There's also Hercules." Another person pointed behind Sun Hao. There was a muscular man who was more than 2 meters tall. Wasn't he arrested and sent to prison? How did he escape? Is it really Hercules? This guy used to be able to fight the army head-on. Little Short Star looked at Sun Hao and said, "Kid, your Xia Dragonfinch has been too arrogant recently. Do you really think that all the ability users in Xia have to respect you?" A buzzing sound came from Hercules' mouth. "Why are you still talking to him? I'm going to tear him in half." "Yeah. Why are you still talking?" Sun Hao's voice came from behind Hercules. "What?" Hercules wanted to turn around, but he realized that he couldn't move at all. "Oh no, my body is paralyzed by the electric current. When did this happen?" But then he felt a pain in the back of his head, and he was knocked unconscious on the ground. Little Short Star was shocked. "Why are you still standing there? Come on, side by side. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving today." Before he finished speaking, 4 people who were no weaker than him appeared at the same time. With a violent burst of psychic energy, they rushed towards Sun Hao together. On the other side, Yan Bei was laughing maniacally as he wandered around. Compared to Sun Hao, who only knocked people unconscious, his side was much more terrifying. There were broken limbs everywhere. Yan Bei obeyed Li Anping's orders and didn't kill anyone, but he used his ability to break people's limbs. Especially the broken parts, they were directly attacked by the force field and turned into powder that was hard to see with the naked eye. It was impossible to connect them back together. "Kid, you're so cruel." A middle-aged man blocked Yen Bei and said angrily, "Let me teach you a lesson." "Me too." An old man walked out from the other side. "This kid is cruel. Who knows how many people he'll kill if we let him out. We have to keep him here. Xia Dragonfinch is really not a good person. Everyone, let's go together. Let him know how powerful we are." "Tisk." Yen Bei dug his ears and looked at them with disdain. "Trash, are you done talking? You're looking for death." The middle-aged man who was the first to speak shouted angrily, "Do it." He took a step and a small figure suddenly appeared behind Yen Bei. Then, the small figure stabbed the knife in his hand into Yen Bei's shadow. Yen Bei's expression changed. The middle-aged man laughed. "You can't move now, right? You've been nailed into the shadow. Be it your hands or legs, no matter which part of your body you can't move. You're at the mercy of others." Someone on the side shouted, "Haha, kid, aren't you very arrogant? Are you going to beg for mercy now? Damn Xia Dragonfinch. I'm going to kill this kid to avenge my brother." "So noisy," Yen Bei shouted. The dozen or so people around him were instantly twisted by the collapsing force field. Their corpses were torn apart and they were turned into dust. Under the effect of the force field, these people didn't even have a drop of blood left, let alone a corpse. It was as if they had suddenly disappeared. The people around him instantly retreated and looked at Yen Bei with fear. "What's going on? What's this guy's ability? Are all the Xia Dragonfinch monsters like this?" Yen Bei looked at the people around him unhappily and mumbled, "I can't believe you made me kill so many people." Thinking about Lianping's order, there was a hint of fear in his eyes. With a boom, Yen Bei slammed his palm on the ground. Under the effect of the force field, the ground rumbled violently and all the people around him were sucked into the mud. Yang Guang looked at Yen Bei, who was far away, and shook his head helplessly. "This guy is still an unstable factor. I should suggest that Sir freeze him again." Then, he turned his head back to face him, and a series of sparks flashed on his diamond head. "Hey, haven't you guys had enough?" A few people were holding guns and machine guns and looking at Yang Guang blankly. After hearing what he said, they were so scared that they ran away. Monster. They were just ordinary people. Yang Guang didn't even bother to chase after them. However, at the same time that they ran away, a few men walked towards Yang Guang. A big man with metal blades on his hands and feet sneered. "Xia bird, you chased me for more than 1,000 kilometers. Today I'm going to cut you all into pieces." Another guy with psychic bullets gathered around him said, "Do it, don't let him run away." Then, more than 10 people around him attacked at the same time. Blades, psychic energy, flames, ice, bullets, all kinds of things hit Yang Guang's body. The explosion rose, smoke and dust flew everywhere. "He's dead. Even if he's a level 4 ability user, he won't be able to survive after being hit by so many attacks at the same time. That's not enough. We're going to kill all those birds." Just then, the smoke and dust in the center of the explosion dissipated. A cold voice was heard. "Who said they're going to kill all of us?" The diamond-like Yang Guang was still standing in the same place without moving. The uniform on his body had long been destroyed by the explosion. However, there wasn't a single trace left on his diamond-like body. Cold sweat flowed down everyone's heart. The big man who had provoked him earlier had a pale face. He was speechless as he looked at Yang Guang, who was unharmed. Tianjing, 8th Research Institute, Basement 12. With a thought from Lianping, the hundreds of clones around him fell down one after another. They looked like dominoes. Among the clones that fell down there were Kirin Type 1, Lei Type 1, and Compound Type 1. They were clones obtained from cloning Zhou Kong, who was a compound ability user. Other than that, there were also clones of various bloodline ability users. Of course, compound Type 1 clones were the most numerous. There were about 500 of them. Li Anping was currently using his level 3 ability to directly kill the powerless clones. After his ability reached level 3, he could directly absorb the souls of ordinary people within a range of 300 meters. Within 500 meters, the life and death of ordinary people could be decided with a single thought. A few seconds later, all the powerless clones fell to the ground. Their souls had already been absorbed, and they had turned into cold corpses. Looking at the remaining dozen or so clones, which were all level 0 ability users, Li Anping directly waved his hands and killed them one by one. He had completed today's soul harvest. Strength 16. 7. Speed 15. 8. Stamina 17. 7. Li Anping frowned. It's still too slow. With a click, an electronic door in the distance opened. Rows of cylindrical robots walked out. They would transport the bodies of the clones under Li Anping's feet away one by one. After the bodies of the clones were transported away, they would be used to cultivate new clones. On average, the cost of one clone was about 50,000 yuan. Li Anping had to harvest 3,000 clones every day. In other words, Li Anping would spend 150 million yuan every day. This was already the limit, because even with the current Xia Dragonfinch and the Zhang family, spending 150 million yuan every day was already a lot. Otherwise, Li Anping would have to expand the scale of production again. I wonder how Sun Hao's side is doing. I hope he can bring some good materials. Li Anping thought. On one hand, I need more funds. On the other hand, I need to improve the ability user cloning technology. Now, sure, one and the other's technology was still not developed enough. They were completely relying on luck. If they were lucky, there would be more ability users among the clones. If they were unlucky, there might not even be one ability user among the 1,000 clones. Moreover, the highest ability user among the clones was only level 2, and it had only appeared once. Also, because these ability users were unable to level up, their lifespans were short. If not for Li Anping's ability to harvest souls, they would really be useless. Chapter 152. While Li Anping was harvesting souls in the 8th Research Institute, the battle in Hongshan, who was thousands of miles away, was completely one-sided. With a crackling sound, Sun Hao waved his right arm and threw a person out. Yan Bei and Yang Guang stood beside him. More than half of the scattered aptitude users had been knocked unconscious. The remaining half surrounded Sun Hao and the other two, but no one dared to go forward. Looking at Sun Hao and the other two who seemed to be unharmed and still had energy left, their eyes were filled with fear. As for Audrey, she stood alone at the exit. Although she did not attack, anyone who tried to escape would be punched and kicked back by her. Elder Yu, what should we do? These dragon sparrow guards are so powerful. That diamond man is so hard. Our attacks are useless against him. The guy with the metal arm is too fast. We can't see him clearly. And that lunatic. His people's limbs were all broken. Damn it. If I had known, I wouldn't have come. Hearing the fear, complaints, and regret of the people below, Yushan did not say a word. Now that things had come to this, even he was a little regretful. If he had known that Xia Dragonfinch was so powerful, he would not have held a gathering. He would have just obediently been a rich man. In front of Sun Hao and other aptitude users who were truly dedicated to fighting, who had received systematic training and experienced countless battles, Yushan was like a flower in a greenhouse. Even if he had reached the 4th energy level, it was useless. Still not surrendering? Sun Hao shouted. If you surrender now, you won't be knocked unconscious or have your limbs broken. At this moment, facing the aggressiveness of Sun Hao and the other three, Yushan was already in a difficult position. We definitely won't be able to defeat these 4 people. Yushan secretly looked at Huang Xia. Do we really have to surrender? Huang Xia looked at him helplessly. He knew that Yushan had already admitted defeat. It was only because of his face that he had not surrendered. However, it was only a matter of time. Forget it. My ability should be able to trap them for the time being. Huang Xia thought, anyway, the objective is almost complete. I should report the information to the Lord as soon as possible. Just as Huang Xia was contemplating and preparing to personally take action, a young man suddenly walked towards Sun Hao and the others alone. Jin Guang stepped out from the crowd. He looked at Sun Hao and the other two and said, "I say, you guys." He looked at the three of them furiously and said, "Why do you guys have to do something like this? Aren't we all the same? Why are you bullying us?" Sun Hao frowned. Just as he was about to say something, Yan Bei interrupted, "Haha, are you an idiot? Who is the same as you? Don't compare your low-end abilities with mine. I can kill as many of you as I want." A low-end ability. Jin Guang lowered his head and mumbled, "For something like this, you can hurt and kill without any psychological burden?" Sun Hao stopped Yan Bei and said, "Little brother, as long as you surrender and don't resist, we won't hurt you." Then why do you want to capture us?" Jin Guang said angrily. "What about the aptitude users that you captured and brought to Tianjing? Have they all been sliced up by you?" Slice them up? Sun Hao had a strange look in his eyes. Jin Guang waved his hand and said, "You guys don't have to explain. I'll beat you guys up and ask Lianping myself." Haha. Yan Bei couldn't help but laugh. "Are you joking? You want to look for Lianping? But the word devil is not wrong." Yang Guang said coldly, "Yan Bei, watch your words." Yan Bei sneered and thought, "What a loyal old dog. Uncle, help me hold this." Jin Guang took off his shirt and threw it to Huang Linjun behind him. He let out a breath and looked at Yan Bei. "You said that the strong ones can kill the weak ones, right? Then why don't you see if I can kill you?" Boom! Jin Guang's psychic energy exploded in an instant. His body emitted an infinite amount of light, and a golden flame burned all over his body. The soaring psyche chi continued to overflow from the surface of his body and drifted in the air. The strong psyche chi was not like Qinchan, who could be controlled by golden light at will. Instead, it completely exceeded the upper limit of golden light's control and overflowed from his body. After all, he was only a level 3 aptitude user. However, this level 3 ability user was no weaker than anyone present in terms of aura alone. When the light disappeared, Jin Guang appeared in front of everyone again. He had turned into a blonde with blue eyes. His hair stood up like a golden flame. Sun Hao squinted and said, "Transformation ability?" Ever since Jin Guang transformed, the naivety on his face had disappeared, replaced by a cold expression. He clenched his fist and said slowly, "After transforming into this state, my strength and speed will increase by about 10 times, and my chi will be limitless. But there's a side effect. In this state, I'll become cold-blooded and I won't hold back. 10 times the speed and strength? And unlimited psychic energy?" Sun Hao was shocked. If what he said is true, then his ability is already on the first level. He should be considered an outsider. Yan Bei looked at him with disdain. "Trash is just trash. Do you think you're different just because you changed your appearance?" Before he finished speaking, Yan Bei raised his hand and created a collapsing space. His target was Jin Guang's arm. He wanted to break Jin Guang's arm. But when the collapsing space appeared, only air was destroyed. Jin Guang left behind a shadow and appeared in front of Yan Bei. He pointed at Yan Bei's forehead. A huge amount of psychic energy gathered at Jin Guang's fingertip. "Be careful." Sun Hao rushed over and pulled Yan Bei away before he could react. There was a loud boom. Jin Guang shot out a huge amount of psychic energy from his fingertip. Like a golden shockwave, it created a tunnel that was hundreds of meters long behind Yan Bei. It was a wasteful use of psychic energy. He gathered all his psychic energy together and released it at one point. Everyone looked at Jin Guang in shock. They remembered what he had said. Unlimited psychic energy. Is his psychic energy really unlimited? The attack did not stop. When Sun Hao pulled Yan Bei away, Yang Guang rushed behind Jin Guang. Unfortunately, Jin Guang's speed had increased by 10 times. After releasing the psychic energy cannon, he could still turn around and open his hand. A huge amount of psychic energy gathered again. A ball of psychic energy the size of a house was thrown out by Jin Guang. The huge explosion engulfed Yang Guang's body. His metal arms and legs were torn apart immediately. When the light from the explosion faded, Yang Guang was half kneeling on the ground. He had lost one of his legs and one of his arms. He could no longer maintain his balance. He had lost his ability to fight. Damn it. If it wasn't for Lady's attack, I wouldn't have been able to use the psychic energy cannon. Jin Guang looked at Sun Hao when he saw that Lady had been defeated. He's too fast. Normal psychic energy attacks can't hit him. Thinking of this, Jin Guang raised his hands. A huge amount of psychic energy gathered in his hands. So what if this is the case? With a shout, Jin Guang's hands shook violently. The psychic energy in his hands turned into countless fist-sized bullets and shot towards Sun Hao. Although Sun Hao was fast, he was holding Yan Bei with his left hand. Facing such a concentrated attack, he had to dodge some of the bullets and hit some of them. Yan Bei roared, "Let go of me! I'm going to kill him!" Sun Hao did not stop him. His opponent was very strong. He could not hold back. Invisible to the naked eye, waves of electromagnetic force emerged from the depths of his body. Audrey took off her cloak and flew to Yang Guang. She carried him behind Sun Hao and Yan Bei. Jin Guang saw that Sun Hao and the rest were ready. He said to the people behind him, "Everyone, please stay behind me. Otherwise, I won't be able to protect you and might hurt you accidentally." Understood. Hide behind our little brother. Come on, little hero. You must win against these bad guys. Jin Guang looked over there coldly and said, "It's not too late for you to surrender. My psychic energy is unlimited. If I keep attacking, you won't be able to block it." Sun Hao did not react. Yan Bei activated his ability again. The collapsed space suddenly appeared in front of Jin Guang's chest. Unfortunately, Jin Guang had already dodged when he sensed the hostility. He said coldly, "Since you're still so stubborn, don't blame me." Jin Guang pushed his hands out and shouted loudly. His psychic energy had already gathered into an energy tide that was like a great river, rushing towards Sun Hao and the other three. The four's faces changed. Sun Hao shouted, "Defend with all your strength. Yan Bei, force him back." Boom. Before he could finish his sentence, Yang Guang was already in front of him. Yan Bei continued to attack Jin Guang with his ability. However, Jin Guang's speed and reaction were way above Yan Bei's. Even when he was moving at a high speed, he was still able to attack the three of them with his psychokinesis cannon. Boom, 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 boom. One after another, the psychic cannon hit Sun Hao and the rest. It was as if they were being bombarded by countless planes. 10 minutes later, Yang Guang, Sun Hao, Audrey, and Yan Bei all collapsed on the ground in exhaustion. In order to block Jin Guang's endless psychic attacks, they had almost used up all their psychic energy and stamina. In fact, if Jin Guang had not held back, the violent psychic attacks would have been enough to tear the three of them apart. The casual players at the side were shocked. What kind of joke is this? How can a third level be so strong? What kind of ability is this? He has unlimited psychic energy. That's terrifying. What's there to be afraid of? He's helping us. It's Xia Dragonfinch's bad luck this time. Jin Guang looked at the four people on the ground and did not know what to do. He just wanted to stop the four of them, but he did not know how to deal with them. Meanwhile, the aptitude users who were beaten up badly by Sun Hao and the rest stood up. Some of them were full of hatred. Kill them! Damn it, strip them of their clothes! Some of them had greedy eyes. That woman is an angel. Lock him up. Just as Jin Guang was at a loss, Huang Linjun patted him on the shoulder. Kill them. Uncle. Uncle? But if we let them live now, they will only be tortured endlessly. Huang Linjun looked at Sun Hao and the rest viciously. Unfortunately, he was wearing a mask, so no one could see his expression. Moreover, these people are Li Anping's lackeys. Who knows how many aptitude users they have killed? Their deaths are not worth regretting. Okay. Jin Guang nodded and walked towards Sun Hao and the rest. However, in this chaos, no one noticed that Sun Hao and the rest were emitting signals which were then received by the satellites in the sky. The satellites were then transmitted to Tianjing and finally appeared in Xia Dragonfinch's base. Chapter 153. Li Anping was walking in the hallway when his phone suddenly rang. Hello? Lu Xing? Why are you calling me? There's a problem. Sun Hao and the others sent out a distress signal. Lu Xing's tone was a little confused. According to their strength, it shouldn't be a problem to take care of Hongshan's people. Can they talk? Lu Xing replied, Yes, but the sound coming from the scene doesn't sound good. Li Anping's footsteps stop. Who is the closest to them? Qian Duo and Scorpion. One is 200 kilometers away, the other is 350 kilometers away. It's too slow. Li Anping frowned. Connect me to the other side. Yes. Just as Jin Guang was walking towards Sun Hao and the others under the violent, greedy, and fanatical gazes of the scattered humans, another person's voice suddenly came from their body. Hello, is anyone there? I'm Li Anping. It was a man's calm voice, but it set off endless waves in the scene. Li Anping? It's that Li Anping. He's here too? Where is he? No, it's the communicator on the Dragon Sparrow Guards. Jin Guang was shocked at first, suspecting that the demon Li Anping had come. However, after careful observation, he realized that it was Sun Hao and the others' communicator that was ringing. Sun Hao replied, I'm Sun Hao, I'm here. Yang Guang was ashamed. Sir, we've let you down. We've failed. Yen Bei's face was unhappy, and Audrey's face was expressionless. The two of them didn't say a word. Did you fail? Li Anping said, It's okay, as long as you're alive. Is there someone stronger than you? Yes. Sun Hao nodded and looked at Jin Guang. There is indeed someone. In terms of external attributes, after transforming, his strength and speed will increase greatly. He might also have unlimited qi. Oh! Li Anping from the Research Institute raised his eyebrows. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing an expression of interest. Unlimited psychic energy? Interesting. Let me talk to him. Sun Hao answered and pointed the communicator at the golden light. Our commander wants to speak to you. Jin Guang was surprised. Talking to me? At this time, Li Anping's voice came from the communicator. Because he was facing Jin Guang, his voice was clearer. Everyone quieted down and listened to this legendary great demon speak. You're that ability user with limitless qi, right? What do you think? Do you want to join Xia Dragonfinch and be my subordinate? Hearing Li Anping's words, everyone was shocked. No one thought that Li Anping's first words would be to recruit Jin Guang. Those scattered people immediately panicked. Little hero, you mustn't agree. Li Anping is sly and cunning. Little brother, you mustn't fall into his trap. They started to persuade Golden Light one after another, and the scene suddenly became a mess. Jin Guang waved his hand and spent a few minutes to signal for everyone to stop. Unknowingly, with the power he displayed, all the ability users present had already respected him. Jin Guang shouted loudly, Everyone, don't worry. I will definitely not join Xia Dragonfinch. He shouted into the communicator, Lianping, I will not join you and be your subordinate. Xia Dragonfinch is randomly arresting and persecuting ability users. You must stop this evil behavior. I didn't arrest them randomly, Lianping said. On the contrary, most of them are criminals with superpowers. I just locked them up and sentenced them one by one. As for those ability users who didn't commit any crimes, I only let them leave behind some basic information. Most of them willingly stayed and joined Xia Dragonfinch. That still won't do. Jin Guang didn't expect the great demon Lianping to reply like this. He said with some hesitation, You aren't the police. You don't have the right to judge them. Furthermore, the act of arresting them is a crime. You also killed people, right? What you did is against the law. The law. Lianping was silent for a while. Then, he suddenly laughed loudly. Don't you know that Xia Dragonfinch is an organization that manages ability users? What? Jin Guang was shocked. He only knew about Xia Dragonfinch a few days ago. He didn't know about Xia Dragonfinch's background and past. What? Without an official background, what we do is a crime. With an official background, what we do is law enforcement. Lianping said with disdain, Things like the law are trampled by the strong. They serve the strong. No, it's not like that, Jin Guang retorted. However, Lianping ignored him and said, You're very interesting. You remind me of some things from the past. When Lianping heard Jin Guang's voice, it was as if he heard what he said in the past. He continued, Because of this, I'll give you a little discount. Release Sun Hao and the others now, and I won't pursue this matter. What did he say? He's too arrogant. We definitely can't let them go. He can't help us here. Huang Xia saw that Jin Guang was hesitant. He was afraid that he would really release Sun Hao and the others. He quickly stepped forward and said, Little brother, don't fall into Lianping's trap. As far as I know, he's currently in Tianjing. There aren't any of his people around here. He's stalling for time. Once their reinforcements arrive, they definitely won't let us go. The others also tried to persuade him. Jin Guang frowned. He stopped the people behind him from persuading him and said into the communicator, I can let them go. No, little hero. Little brother, you can't fall into this devil's trap. Jin Guang waved his hand to stop them and said, But there's a prerequisite for letting them go. Xia Dragonfinch must stop capturing ability users. You can capture ability users, but only criminals. Also, you must hand them over to the court for sentencing. Lianping sneered, Impossible. Jin Guang frowned and said stubbornly, Do you want your subordinates to die? If you don't want to see them die, promise me. If you don't, I'll kill them. Childish threat, Lianping said with disdain. Even if I promise, will you believe me? This. Jin Guang was speechless. Lianping said impatiently, I don't have time to play your childish game of justice with you. I've already given you too much preferential time. That's it. I'll be at Hongshan in 10 minutes. If you're not afraid of death, you can stay there. After saying that, Lianping hung up the communicator. However, what he said made the people present fall into chaos. Arrive in 10 minutes? Is Lianping really nearby? He's bringing reinforcements? What should we do? Xia Dragonfinch is coming. Take those 4 people as hostages. Seeing the people below fall into chaos again, Yushan finally stood up. He heard Lianping's words just now, but he didn't dare to say anything. He was afraid that he would be blacklisted by Xia Dragonfinch. Everyone, don't worry. Lianping is in Tianjing. It's more than 2,000 kilometers away from here. It's impossible for him to make it here. Huang Xia also began to comfort the people. However, there were still some people who didn't believe it. They had different opinions on how to deal with Sun Hao and the other 3. The hundreds of people below the stage were originally a motley crew. Under Li Anping's threat, they immediately became scattered sand. Especially after seeing the strength of Sun Hao and the other three, they were even more afraid of Xia Dragonfinch. While the aptitude users in Hongshan were quarreling, Li Anping had already walked out of the research institute. At the same time, he was on the phone with Lu Xing. Lu Xing, I remember that the fastest missile in the military can reach Mach 25, right? Lu Xing replied, yes, it's the Dragon Sword missile that has just been tested successfully. The nearest silo is in the north of Tianjin, right? Ask the military to arrange a Dragon Sword missile for me. The target is Hongshan. The sky above Sun Hao and the others. What? Lu Xing said in surprise, but this kind of intercontinental missile is currently… Li Anping couldn't be bothered to listen to Lu Xing's explanation. He said directly, if there's a problem, contact Zhang Yanheng and ask him to put pressure on the military. If it still doesn't work, just tell Wang Chong directly. Anyway, I'll be at the silo in 1 minute and ask them to arrange the missile for me. Lu Xing couldn't help but ask, forgive me for being blunt, sir, but what's your goal? Of course it's to take the missile. I'm too slow. I can't fly there in time. Chapter 154. By the time Li Anping finished speaking, he had already reached the surface. He hung up the phone and leaped into the air. He flew in the direction of the missile silo. What he said to Lu Xing had a huge impact on the entire Tianjin in the next minute. First, Lu Xing came forward as a representative. He sent his subordinates to the military to prepare to launch a Dragon Sword missile. Then, Zhang Yanheng, the head of the Zhang family, came forward and gave the same order. Just as the military wanted to confirm the authenticity of these two orders, another order was issued from the imperial city. Xia Dragonfinch's commander-in-chief, Li Anping, was to arrive in 1 minute and personally guide the launch of the Dragon Sword missile. His orders were to take precedence. This order was even more confusing. Whether it was within 1 minute or guide the launch of the missile, they were all unheard of by the military. However, what happened next was even more mysterious to the military. Xia's emperor thought that they were too slow, so he directly gave the order to command the silo in the north of Tianjin. When Li Anping arrived at the entrance of the silo, everything was ready. In a short period of time, the news that Li Anping was going to fly out of Tianjin on a missile had spread throughout the 9 royal families. Countless people began to guess his purpose. Information about Hongshan was immediately retrieved. However, at this time, no one dared to detonate the missile, let alone intercept it. The example of the Zhang family was right in front of them. No one dared to challenge Li Anping, especially when the League of Stars could attack Li Anping at any time. In midair, the missile, which had reached Mach 15, flew toward Hongshan. Li Anping hugged the missile and stuck his body close to it. To be honest, this position was very ugly. However, when the missile reached Mach 15, the air had almost become a solid blade. It kept tearing Li Anping's skin open and then healing itself under the effect of his soul power. Fortunately, he had been constantly harvesting souls during this time and had already recovered more than 5,000 souls. At this speed, if Li Anping stood up, he would probably be flung out immediately. This kind of journey was definitely a kind of torture. Li Anping thought that in the future, as the battlefield expanded to cover the entire Xia and even the entire eastern continent, he would definitely need a faster means of transportation to transport himself. In that case, the military should modify the Dragon Sword missile. There was no need to change it too much. Consider things like comfort and safety. All he had to do was get them to remove the medicine and take his place. This way, he could reach any location in the eastern continent within half an hour. A minute later, Li Anping and the Dragon Sword missile passed through the acceleration stage and broke through the atmosphere. They followed the elliptical orbit outside the atmosphere and flew toward Hongshan. The missile's speed had reached Mach 25. In just a few minutes, Li Anping had already crossed 2,000 kilometers and arrived 100 kilometers above Mount Hongshan. His eyes were fixed on the mountain range below. Then, he adjusted his posture and stomped his feet, shooting toward the ground. The missile that was stomped by his feet directly flew out and exploded in the air. As for Li Anping, he was now rushing toward the ground at an astonishing speed with boundless kinetic energy. The air was screaming. The atmosphere was screaming. A white airwave in the sky pierced toward the north of Mount Hongshan like a sharp sword. When the missile flew toward them with a whistling sound, only a small number of people looked toward the sky and pointed. "What's that? Is that an airplane?" When the missile exploded in the sky, the scattered ability users in the valley were still arguing about how to deal with Sun Hao and the others, until someone heard the loud noise coming from the sky. He pointed to the sky and said, "Something exploded." "What's that?" A fireball rose up in the sky, and below the fireball, a black shadow that was hard to see with the naked eye rushed towards the ground. Following a series of loud sounds, the black shadow was surrounded by blasts of air, and the speed of the black shadow became slower and slower. Finally, someone saw the appearance of the black shadow. The missile exploded. "It's a person! Is it one of Xia Dragonfinch's men?" Jin Guang looked at the black shadow in the sky and said in disbelief, "Who is it?" On Sun Hao's side, looking at the high-profile figure in the sky, he could not help but say, "Is it Sir?" Yang Guang next to him said, "Is Sir here?" Yanbei looked at the sky with an ugly expression. He did not expect Li Anping to arrive in this way. He did not know if he should be glad or afraid of his opponent's strength, because seeing Li Anping getting stronger and stronger, he felt that there was less and less hope for him to escape from his opponent's control. Li Anping, who was in the air, kept using Void Step. He stepped on airwaves to reduce his falling speed. In the end, he landed lightly on the ground and stood in front of Sun Hao and the others. "Are the four of you okay?" He turned around and glanced at Sun Hao and the others. "We're fine." Sun Hao smiled bitterly and said, "I didn't expect my first mission to fail after recovering from my injuries. I even had to trouble you to come personally. Also, the way you made your entrance this time was really amazing. You guys leave first." "Leave the rest to me," Li Anping said. Immediately, someone jumped out and said, "No, you can't just come and go as you please. Do you think this is your home?" Yushan also could not help but say, "Sir, so many of our brothers have died. Do you really think you can just leave like this?" Although Li Anping's entrance was very impressive, the psychic force on his body was actually at the 3rd level. This made everyone suspect that Li Anping relied on a special ability to ride the missile and come down from the sky unscathed. If it was Song Bang or Zhurong who appeared in front of them, of course, they would not even dare to fart. But now, the person in front of them was just a small, 3rd-level ability user. Especially when Sun Hao and the others were so strong just now, they were still defeated by Jin Guang alone. Yushan and the others were now relying on Jin Guang's strength. Naturally, they were not willing to just let Sun Hao and the others go. Li Anping turned a deaf ear to their words and waved his hand to let Sun Hao and the others leave first. And with Li Anping personally overseeing things, whether it was Sun Hao, Yang Guang, Yanbei, or Audrey, they were all very relieved. They turned a deaf ear to Yushan and the others. Seeing them supporting each other and leaving on their own, a big man immediately rushed out first. "Don't even think about escaping." The big man was wearing a black singlet. His body was full of muscles as he strode towards Li Anping. "None of you can leave today." He thought to himself, "Those monsters just now were too strong. If I didn't hide at the back, I'm afraid I would have fallen. But now they are either injured or disabled. This guy who fell from the sky is only at the 3rd level. Finally, it's my turn to make a name for myself. Just as he was thinking this, a few aptitude users rushed towards Li Anping and Sun Hao. Their faces were filled with excitement and fanaticism. Obviously, they had the same thought as Lin Xiaotian. But apparently, they had forgotten that Jin Guang, who defeated Sun Hao and the others, was only at the 3rd level. A white light flashed from Li Anping's mouth, and the aptitude users who rushed out all screamed and flew back. What is that? Yu Shan was shocked. Is that a flying sword? Flying sword? How can there be such a thing? Huang Xia was shocked too. He could only see Li Anping spit out a white light from his mouth, and the aptitude users flew back with blood spurting out. But in the next moment, he understood. No, it's not a flying sword. It's air. Jin Guang's eyes stared at Li Anping. You killed them? You have no eyesight. You deserve to die. Li Anping's voice was soft, but it was heard by everyone. I'm Li Anping. I'm not interested in your nonsense. I'll give you 2 choices. Kneel down or die. Li Anping's words were like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples. Whether it was the name Li Anping or the 2 choices Li Anping gave them, they were all shocked. Everyone started to quarrel. Some wanted to resist, some wanted to negotiate with Li Anping, and some felt that things were not going well. They looked around and wanted to escape. Yu Shan's legs couldn't help but tremble. He didn't think that just because he wanted to use Xia Dragonfinch's name to recruit aptitude users, not only did he recruit the Dragon Sparrow Guards, but now even the great devil Li Anping personally appeared. Li Anping. Huang Linjun stared at Li Anping. He didn't think that he would come here personally. Although his heart was filled with hatred, he still quietly retreated, afraid that Li Anping would see him. Even if Li Anping didn't even remember a small character like him. Jin Guang said angrily, "You bastard. Today, I won't let you kill a single person." After he finished speaking, he gathered a large amount of psychic energy in his hand and shouted like a river, all of it blasting towards Li Anping. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.